recorded live.
Welcome to the Tuesday Night's Triumph Over Targeting podcast. I'm your moderator, Ella. I invite Spencer Carter on to discuss the world-renowned Technology, Film, and Music Conference, South by Southwest, that takes place in Austin, Texas every spring and is attended by influencers, entrepreneurs, innovators from around the globe. The conference has launched the startup careers of countless entrepreneurs, including the founders of Twitter, and it provides a wealth of knowledge to its attendees through numerous panels and workshops. As a result, makers, hackers, inventors, producers, streamers, and corporations, big and small, attend the conference by the tens of thousands, and the influence it has on society reaches millions every year. A particular note this year is a panel submitted for consideration entitled Run Your Own Counterintelligence Service with SDR. For those unfamiliar with the term SDR, it stands for Software Defined Radio, and it has revolutionary potential when it comes to analyzing the electromagnetic spectrum. Wireless devices and their associated electromagnetic radiation are exploding in numbers, and they are everywhere. Smartphones, smart meters, appliances, and a whole host of emerging devices are familiar to us. SDR, unlike expensive hardware of the past, makes it very affordable to analyze, monitor, and understand the radiation that our generation is the first to be bombarded with on such a massive scale. Furthermore, as any biophysicist will tell you, certain electromagnetic frequencies can have negative effects on the biological systems of humans and have even been weaponized. SDR holds the potential to deter the spreading abuse of such covert weapons that are already being used to carry out Soviet-style purges in America. See biggerthansnowden.com. Therefore, this topic is of paramount importance to us. And the only way to preserve democracy is for the citizenry to remain informed. And that's from Spencer Carter's site. And I'll turn you over to Spencer now.
Yeah, hey, Ella. Let me ease into this in case these deep state thugs are playing games with my phone. They do the craziest stuff these days with my phone. They'll turn on, like, I listen to audiobooks a lot, so they'll turn on like an audiobook. My phone's on the other side of the room, and like fast forward it to a chapter where like some guy's getting murdered. It's crazy the remote access software they have, and none of my antivirus software picks it up. You know, the deep state or the military industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, just harbors these zero-day exploits that they deploy on TIs, unfortunately. Anyways, I'm just going through the small talk to see if you're getting a clear reception or if I should switch to a landline or anything.
So you sound great. You sound very clear.
Excellent. That's good. I know on the last call when Tom was on,
they were hard to understand with all the interference or something that was going on, but you sound good.
Yeah, well, thanks for the introduction. I guess, first of all, who were you talking about earlier? You said his name was Brian Coffrin. I've heard a lot about him recently, a lot of buzz surrounding some of his revelations. Brian Coffrin is his real name that he goes by?
Yeah, I don't know about the pronunciation. Coffron, probably Coffron.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but is it worth listening to his what he has to say? I've gotten like tons of emails saying to check it out.
Yes, you should, because his model. Well, there's one part you won't like. He does mention human experimentation, which I know you don't like that term. He does mention that, but the rest of his model is very similar to your personal beliefs, so you definitely should give it a listen.
They were experiments at one point, many decades ago, but they transformed into crimes and treason. But
you should listen.
I don't get worked up. I don't really mind the semantics too much. As what matters is we're being tortured with these covert weapons illegally, and whether society wants to view it as an experiment or what it truly is, a crime against humanity. The important thing is society knows it's happening, because that's what will get it shut down.
He talks DNA experiments, though. He's talking about current DNA experimentation.
All right. Well, I'll check him out. I guess he goes by Brian or Justin, So, but I've got his link to his site. I'll give that a listen, and I'll keep what you said in mind and judge him by what he says, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for the introduction. As you mentioned, I wanted to touch on software-defined radio. So it's kind of a nerdy topic, but I guess we've got an army of nerds ruining our lives, so we've got to educate ourselves. The key to democracy and preserving it is an informed citizenry, and not just being informed in your profession or your interests or your hobbies, but being informed in all subject matters, from science to art. Let me just make my own kind of introduction to tell you why software-defined radio is important, and then I've got just a one-page brief here, and then I'll go into the aspects of software-defined radio without making it too boring, and realize you probably won't take it all in the first time, but I'll try to explain it to everyone. And most TIs I've met on these calls are smart people, so y'all will pick it up. I wasn't a professional scientist, even though I had a scientific background before I came into this. I was a businessman, but it's just something that we've got to teach ourselves about. So let me read this one page kind of brief to lay the groundwork of why this is important. Okay, here I go. The military, spy, and federal law enforcement bureaucracies have combined budgets of over $700 billion every year. The number one goal of this country for over 15 years has been to fight terrorism, ever since the terrible events of 9/11 claimed 3,000 lives. I think we can all agree that preventing terrorism, especially on American soil, is a very worthy pursuit. However, countless tens of thousands have reported domestic terrorism in recent years, yet they are completely ignored by all of our agencies dedicated to protect us from these assaults. Why? Because the terrorism is being carried out with electromagnetic weapons, and no response directives have been issued. We all know that electromagnetic radiation, EMR, in the visible light spectrum can create colors and images in the neural circuits of our brain. EMR in the X-ray spectrum can cause cancer, and it is well known that EMR in many other spectrums can cause a whole range of different effects in humans. The official bodies know this and have studied and developed these weapons for decades. For example, the Weapons of Mass Casualty and Terrorism Response Handbook, released by a board of over a dozen mainstream doctors, acknowledges that these weapons have been studied for years, that they cause psychological and physical trauma, and yet they dodge providing solutions because they say they're classified. The solution is easy, however. It's called a spectrum analyzer. You can deploy one with a properly trained engineer in the dwelling of a victim of this new form of terrorism as one form of deterring or detecting these assaults. Let's look at the feasibility of this. Many electronics companies produce spectrum analyzers, and you can get a decent one for around $3,500 these days, which is a lot cheaper than it was in years past. A qualified engineer needed to set up and monitor such a device for a few days would likely cost, in this hypothetical, $3,500 as well. So that's $7,000 in all. Now imagine that our security agencies really wanted to get to the bottom of these growing domestic terrorism atrocities, and they decided to deploy these devices in the homes of 100,000 targeted individuals to prove them right or wrong. Many of these victims are very credible doctors, lawyers, professors, and military veterans, so it's the least that should be done. What would be the cost of that? In this hypothetical, you would multiply 100,000 people by $7,000 and arrive at $700 million. This is a large amount of money, but remember that every year our federal defense and security agencies get $700 billion. Therefore, the cost of doing a thorough investigation of these serious crimes would amount to 1/1,000th or 0.1% of their annual budgets. Furthermore, there are over 5 million individuals in the U.S. with security clearances, bigger than the population of Norway. And a lot of them, or most, I'd say, have technical background. It would be a very easy matter to source just 100,000 to perform an investigation into what could be the greatest terrorist conspiracy in the history of our nation. The above example outlines the most thorough response. In all likelihood, a sample of victims amounting to 10,000 or 1,000 could be helped at first, and therefore the required budgets would just be 70 million or 7 million respectively. If a country whose number one goal is fighting terrorism won't spend 0.1% or even 0.001% of its security budget investigating the countless credible reports of terrorism on American soil, then something is horribly wrong. Many researchers would even argue that these weapons that are no more exotic than chemical, atomic, or biological weapons are being used to create Soviet-style purges in the U.S. Sadly, it's becoming hard to argue with that contention, and survey data shows that the number of victims of this silent Holocaust are growing exponentially. So that's the problem we face. It's the problem that countless human rights activists have faced in the past centuries, or victims of atrocities have faced in past decades even. We knew asbestos was causing cancer and mesothelioma, yet due to moneyed and powered interests, it stayed in use for another, several years while 500,000 people died from it. So these kinds of atrocities happen all the time. And, it's our job to, study the tactics, the peaceful and legal activism tactics of the groups and people and heroes like Paul Brodeur, who exposed asbestos, or the civil rights marchers who got the vote for black people and other minorities, or even the women's suffragette movement. I was recently reading a book around the World War I era because, it's the centennial of when America entered the war. And, it talked about the women's suffragette movement. And, women in this country didn't get the vote until 1920. And you know what they would do to women who would hold up signs and protest, that atrocity? They would throw them in insane asylums. So these tactics that they're still using to deprive PIs of their human rights, they go back 100 years. They probably go back even further. It's the oldest trick in the book. So we need to take, comfort in the fact that people have been through this before and they have prevailed. And, that brings us to our problem. There's a solution to this. There's spectrum analyzers, among many other things, biomarkers, reproduction of the technology in a controlled legal environment, whistleblower testimony.
I just had a quick.
Yeah,
go ahead. What type of analyzers do you suggest?
Yes. Well, in the briefing I introduced my speech with, I used, kind of a standard analyzer you'd see on a company like Aronia site, AARONIA, and, they're a couple $1,000. And, you've got to teach yourself how to use it as well. And, different analyzers cover different spectrums. And so it's just out of the price range of most TIs, I'd say. I'm considering buying one for myself, or was, but that's a lot to throw a couple $1,000, and then to teach yourself how to use it. You probably have to hire experts. I mean, this, as my introduction said, should be performed by the government. They have no reason not to. It's a huge, huge red flag, and we all know why. It's because there's corrupt, rotten apples. A small percentage that are behind these crimes against humanity in the deep state or the military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. So, that's a hurdle, and maybe you won't get the right type at first. Maybe you have to experiment with a couple different times. We could be looking at, lots of money, or, I could. So, I've been hesitant to, throw, what remaining money I have into buying this expensive equipment that the government should be using to stop this domestic terrorism. So I've been looking for other solutions. And that brings me to the introduction that you gave about software-defined radio. It's incredible what's being developed by tinkerers, innovators, entrepreneurs, hackers, tech nerds, all these people, that flock to, these massive conferences like South by Southwest Interactive and many others across the nation. They're really, using, instead of a standalone device that, would be a spectrum analyzer in the traditional sense, that's a piece of hardware dedicated to it. They're using the hardware that's already built into our computers and just running, a free piece of software on that with, a very cheap attachment. I've heard prices as low as $20. And, this stuff is being studied by so many just citizen scientists right now. So, you know what? The answer to, the government, not the government, just, not because they're corrupt, but, the failure of the leadership in these bureaucracies to issue these common sense directives to deploy spectrum analyzers to detect and deter these domestic terrorism assaults. There's an answer that's springing up in the free market that's affordable. As I just mentioned, these people, doing this research and, studying this, hardware and this software and putting out YouTube videos on how to use it and building it yourself. And these people aren't selling anything. They're just telling you, what to buy at, Fry's or off of Amazon to build it yourself for, $100 or less or something. I haven't built it yet, but, I'm going to these workshops and I'm teaching myself that. So that's a game changer. And I've seen demos of this stuff in action and it works. And, these people are vetted and, it's grounded in hard science. And, technology gets cheaper and cheaper every year. So instead of getting, standalone hardware that might have been $250,000 several years ago and might be, several thousand today, they're overlaying, software onto the hardware that's built into their laptops or desktops to do this spectrum analysis for, next to nothing, what you'd spend on a nice meal. And, they're doing it just for, they aren't selling anything. They're just doing it just to advance the knowledge of humanity because technology is, advanced that far, and there's a lot of interest in wireless out there because, there's this term IoT, the Internet of Things, like your Amazon Echo and, your smart thermostats and, everything's going wireless. And, so there's a lot of interest in, measuring, what all electromagnetic radiation is going through us. And these things can be repurposed and modified. And I was just speaking to another TI, and he's done some of this stuff. He's repurposed some of the software-defined radio and to detect the frequencies that are known to cause physical and psychological trauma in humans. And I forget his name. He's from South Africa. I was just speaking to him on Facebook. I just met him. He saw my post about software-defined radio, and he responded. But his name is Clint. We've got people in the community already that are familiar with the use of this. Clint McLean. But there's also people, in the Silicon Valley community, just doing this as a hobby, just because they think it's cool, and it is cool. So they're basically providing us these tools that are just a minute fraction of the cost, and they aren't selling it there and making money. They're just putting the information out there so we can do it ourselves, and they're doing it in a very easy way. And 20 years ago, if you wanted to run a computer, you might have had to use a DOS prompt. Like, the software is advancing, so it's like there's a graphical user interface, and it's easy to use and understand. And this one fellow has been named James Brown, no relation to the soul singer. He's an engineer in Silicon Valley. I've read about his work. He gave a kind of a satellite speech at South by Southwest, which is a big deal. And this year he's been selected as a contender to give a workshop panel at South by Southwest, which is a huge deal in the tech world. I mean, this South by launches so many careers. It's attended by 70,000 people, I believe. And I want to see this guy get his workshop selected by the official South by Southwest committee as an official panel that, people attending this conference are going to notice and see and learn about. So it starts putting these ideas into the minds of mainstream Americans. And also, the workshops, will, give, step-by-step examples of how we can deploy this software to, detect the assaults coming against us. Let's see. There's voting going on right now, and they call it the South by Southwest panel picker, and you can find a link to his page at freedomsos.com. The top blog post on freedomsos.com will link you to his page. And I'm rebooting my computer, so I can give you a direct link, but you'll see it right away at freedomsos.com. He also, his personal website is called cointel.co, which is kind of a play on the term of COINTELPRO, but he's all about, helping the good guys and, helping, TIs with people being tortured with this weaponry by detecting it. It's probably easiest to find a link to his site on my Facebook page or freedomsos.com. Just one word, freedomsos.com. But the direct URL is panelpicker.sxsw.com/vote/70975. That's panelpicker.sxsw.com/vote/70975. Once again, the guy's name is James Brown, and the name of the workshop that he wants to run is called Run Your Own Counterintelligence service with SDR. And he's got some supporting materials on there. He's got a slideshow. He's got a link to his personal website, and it'd be great to see this guy give an official speech at South by Southwest, because not only could we learn from it, but it would just hopefully awaken a lot of people and start to get people thinking about, hey, electromagnetic weapons can do some crazy things to our biological systems. We got to stop living in the Stone Ages. We've got to stop letting, our bureaucratic officials ignore these crimes against humanity, because South by Southwest is a very, very influential conference that's attended by tens of thousands, and is it's kind of a trendsetter. So it would be great to see this guy get his speech as an official selection. So it's free to vote. He's not selling anything. He's just providing information. And I'm just, my hat goes off to him. So, do yourself a favor and the TI community a favor and go to that link and give him a vote, because, it'll teach us in the community more about this emerging field of software-defined radio. And eventually, as, some TIs are already doing, we'll figure out a way to deploy it to, gain further empirical evidence of the attacks being carried out against us.
Well, thank you.
That sums it up.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, let's just open it up. We'll open up the floor. I know there's going to be two topics probably, what I open with and then what you're bringing to the table too. So I will, let's see. Matthew, did you have a question? I noticed that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to make a fairly substantial comment on Brian Coffran, but maybe we should let people ask Spencer questions first, since we're on that topic now.
Okay, sure.
Come back to me when we switch topics, please.
Okay, it's going to be a little tricky because I'm going to have to ask everybody. We'll see. Okay. Okay. Hi, Tide. Would you like to comment, or do you have a comment or question for Spencer?
Yeah, I don't want to top the line too much, but I have a couple. Yeah. Hi, Ella. Hi, Spencer. Okay, so regarding the SDR, software-defined radio, this is a way to kind of put blocks together to create drift and transforms and that sort of thing, right? How can we use it specifically with HackRF? And what frequencies would want? And I guess this is more of a training thing, what you're talking about. But is this something we can maybe have a weekly call on and have it a technical thing and do amongst ourselves?
I envision it, just as a reception tool, just to detect and locate, any electromagnetic devices that are being used to, in a scientific studies prove, are being used to torture us. And there's a TI named Clint who's working on a scientific paper on it. And there's a lot of people in the tech and .com and Silicon Valley communities working on it.
What is his name? I'm sorry.
So I'm really learning about this technology as we go. I have a background in some scientific areas, computer hardware and ham radio, but I've been in the business world. I was a successful university grad and businessman until my torture began 24/7 a few years ago. So when it comes to electrical engineering, I basically just follow step-by-step instructions. So that's why I love these people so much, because they're putting out YouTube videos and workshops that make it very accessible to the average person. And, I'm becoming more proficient in it. And, I think anyone would become more proficient in it. And I like the idea of having, get-togethers and discussions about it. Clint suggested that. He lives in South Africa, so he's 7 hours ahead of us, I believe. So he couldn't make it on the call, but he's really got it down. And this guy James Brown, who I'm urging everyone to vote for, so he can get on South by Southwest. And I believe those panels are recorded, so we could all watch it from our home and see exactly what he does step by step. So anyone could do it. And there's some electrical engineers like Neil Chevrolet in the community that are working on this. If we can organize our efforts, but I think breakthroughs are coming. I don't want to build up people's hopes and say this is going to solve a problem right away, but this is on the horizon, something that's definitely going to be a game changer.
Does one
so
truly
if you have any
30...
ideas on organizing discussions or committees in a way that is practical, I'd love to connect because that's important. Just check out. Are you on Facebook or anything?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Well, you can give Ella your info or get my Facebook link from Ella or something. I don't know if Ella in touch.
You're a little bit muffly, Spencer. As the time has gone on, you've got a little more muffly. Is there any way to?
Can you put us in touch via Facebook if I email you, Ella? Do you have his Facebook details?
Sure. Yes, I do. I have all his information. No problem. Yeah, just email me.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Spencer. Sounds good.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Okay, and if I haven't gotten back to you in the past week, or if somehow I promised to get back to you and I didn't, please email me again. I don't want people to slip between the cracks. I try to pride myself in, answering everybody and getting back to everybody, so just email me again if for some reason I didn't follow up. Okay. Thank you, Tide. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Okay, going to come on to Mr. Neil.
Oh, hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good considering all. Better than normal, I have to say.
Oh, good.
Hey, speak of the devil. How are you
what's
doing,
happening?
Mel?
Hey, keeping yourself busy, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I do my best. The sleep deprivation is bad, but I'm at it full time during my waking hours. So, how is everything? Have you been exploring the world of SDR lately?
Not lately, but I got into it when we were running the R&D calls, and there is a forum. I think it's Yahoo Groups. I'll just pass the information over to you, and the software was a .de website, and it's been a while since I've been there. I'll have to get on my other computer to get that link. So I was gonna, so I could post it in the chat room at least. And also there is the RF Explorer on Amazon. The top one that goes to 6 gigahertz is about $360. But what's been reported to me from 2 engineers is the guy with the $5,000 Erroneous said the software for the SDR is better, and so did the guy with the RF Explorer, who's a semiconductor engineer. So apparently,
wow, that shows how much this technology is advancing. Every month. Where something 10% of the price of legacy hardware is better. That's incredible.
I know. I was surprised to hear that. And for anybody who does want to do this now, you can go over to New Elec, which is spelled NOUELEC, SOOELEC.com, and they sell all the RTL dongle SDRs, like, $20 like you find on Amazon, but they have bundles, and you buy that $20 RTL SDR dongle, plug it into your USB port, and then you get a little SMA connector. It's called a pigtail because it's just a short piece of wire, and you buy the $55 up converter, and that takes you up to 1745 megahertz, if I remember right. And the up converter is just a little PC board. You can spend another $20 and get the little case that goes with it, and it's just got 4 little screws to mount the cover on there, and it's all, professional and well protected, and a place to plug in, and it's got a switch on it for going through or not through for other options. But the bundles have all of that basic stuff that I just mentioned at SOOELEC.com.
Yeah, that's a great way to start and get your feet wet. But for our non-technical listeners, and I was in this boat myself, they need like a YouTube explaining step by step, and that's hard for us to do in the TI community. You know better than I. Some days you're so battered you just need to go outside and go on a bike ride because the electromagnetic torture is so hard. So that's why I have so much hope in the .com community, and that's why I'm so excited that they're focused on this, because they aren't being battered like we are, so they have the time and energy to organize this stuff to where it can be digested and listed out and explained in a very easy to use iPhone style manner to your just average individual. So for those looking to start playing around with this stuff now, I urge you to proceed with what Neil mentioned and know that it's only going to get easier and more user friendly in the future, especially if people like James Brown and other people like him start getting picked to give speeches at these world-renowned conferences like South by Southwest.
And, I don't want people to think that this is super technical. I mean, I'm an electrician. I'm not an electronic engineer. I'm a tinker, and I'm 60 years old, so I've tinkered with a lot of things. But there is a lot of stuff on YouTube, and we could put a little information pack together of links to go to on YouTube that are specific to this one software that has a .de suffix, so it must be German for Deutsch. And if somebody was doing a call, I don't want to volunteer for more stuff because I'm already just swamped and running behind on things I'd like.
Yeah, that's the problem. We're all in that boat, and I'm slowly and surely going to be organizing this stuff, and hopefully I can help you. But take hope in the fact and realize that this stuff is only going to get cheaper and easier. It's already so cheap compared to what it was a few years ago. You mentioned the $5,000 Aronia machine, which is kind of the gold standard. They list their clients on their website, and their clients include the Department of Defense and the FBI. So why wouldn't the FBI and the Department of Defense use these spectrum analyzers on these TIs? Look at a site like biggerthansnowden.com. You look on biggerthansnowden.com, and you've got, the salt of the earth, these people who've served their country for years, like David Voigt or Karen Stewart in the Navy or the NSA, or, practicing doctors like John Hall or Dan Leibowitz. And, they're just ignored. It's so corrupt. It's a huge red flag, and the technology is there to fix it. And these bureaucracies are clients of the companies that make the technology. And as you mentioned earlier, the SDR software, that's just a fraction of a percent, or a small percentage of what the name brand stuff is going for, is getting cheaper by the day, and it's better than the name brand stuff. and it's only going to get cheaper and easier to use. So, I agree, man. Let's start organizing this stuff. But, even if we, don't get it knocked out right away, I want everyone to know that on the horizon that, this stuff is getting cheaper and easier to use, and people like James Brown, who are going to be giving, South by Southwest speeches talking about this stuff, are just going to make it just explode because, our lives are ruled by wireless devices, our iPads, our iPhones, everything's going wireless. Our lighting systems, our alarm systems, our everything. So, the general community is taking an interest in this and starting to wonder, about what all this electromagnetic radiation flowing through our bodies, doing unintentionally. And sooner or later, it's going to click with the mainstream that, this stuff can be used to harm people intentionally. And then they might put in the effort to look at the scientific studies and the whistleblower statements and the research going back to Subproject 119 in 1960 and realize, oh my God, electromagnetic weapons are real and they're no more exotic than biological or chemical weapons. How could we not realize this? So, this is something good on the horizon. It's not going to happen overnight, but South by is in March. So in the coming months, we could see some revolutionary changes, and I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because this is a time for as many people who can. When all you have to put out is $100, you can go over to SDRsharp@yahoo.com. Apparently is where the forum is. And then we can give all the information, I can have Skizit put it in her newsletter and pass it on to you. If we had even a couple of people in every state, it would make enough of a scene. And the truth is, when you find stuff around that's not at safe levels and you can identify the frequency range, then the FCC on my frequency list shows you a lot of what those frequency ranges are licensed to. And at that point, legally, the FCC is supposed to come out with their really nice equipment and find out what you're alarmed about and see if somebody's blowing it. And the other thing is, obviously, power companies don't know the smart meters are being hacked into and used against TIs. But the telecommunications industry recently has had to reveal to people that are investors that their frequencies are harming people. And some of that data got out on the Internet and is all over the place. And so is the pseudoscience that they put up to try and hide that it does hurt people. So we're right on the edge of this is the perfect time for some assertive TIs. Like I said, don't be afraid that it's too technical. When you see the software, you'll just go, wow, this is really cool. I like 98.5 FM, so to practice, I'm going to tune this thing into 98.5. You slide the little red line over with your mouse to 98.5 megahertz, and you hear the radio station come on, and you go, wow, this is so cool. And then you turn around and go, okay, smart meters are 902 to 928 megahertz. Slide over there and just keep an eye on it and watch. I caught mine going up to 235 milligauss and burned the side of my face. And then you take a picture
235 milligauss? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I got a picture of the meter recording it.
Oh, my God. Yeah, and, it's becoming a great area of interest in the IT and the information security community as well because, all their networks are wireless and they're just, concerned about, interference or hacking and stuff. So they're taking an interest in this as well. So they're going to, be stumbling upon this stuff as well and organizing it. And they have the luxury of not being, battered and tortured. So, we're going to be getting a lot of good things in the future, and it's cheap. It's so cheap compared to what it was a few years ago. And, if the government's not going to step up and do their jobs and stop this domestic terrorism, you know what? It's legal and it's cheap, and I'm going to do it myself. And I hope other people, take Neil's advice and start playing around with this software as well, because that's the way you learn it. Just have fun with it. You aren't going to become an expert in it overnight, but just start fiddling with it and build up your skill set as you go. Thank you so much for those comments, Neil.
You're welcome. And the whole thing is, when you do find something that's not supposed to be coming through your house and you're picking it up on your SDR antenna, you can take a picture of your computer screen. When we get enough of those pictures together, we have enough evidence to say the FCC has to do its job. This is unsafe levels of warfare on civilian public citizens. It's against the law.
Absolutely. The plausible deniability and the cover stories won't cut it anymore.
That's it. That's the difference right there. Just keep pushing this, because I don't want people to be afraid that it's too technical. It's not. We could teach a 12-year-old kid how to do this with their aptitude in a couple hours. It's really that easy. And then just learn more of the features and all that.
And it's getting
later.
easier every day.
Yep. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, I hope you get a chance to vote. You can find the link at freedomsos.com.
I got it. All right, I will.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. It's always good to hear your voice. Okay, I'm going to come to New York now. Hi, New York. New York. It always seems to be not quite by the phone. It's next person.
Yeah, that was Neil Chevrier, everyone. He still runs a call, I believe, on Sundays.
Yes, he does. It's a great call.
And he's targeted pretty hard, but he's done a lot of research in this area. So keep his name in mind, everyone, because he's a good resource.
Yeah, he is. So maybe I failed to mention, if you're new to the call and you have a question and you want to ask Spencer a question, go right ahead and star 8. And then we'll do another, I'll do another session. I'll ask, we can discuss the Justin Carter, also known as, I guess his real name is Brian Cofron. So go ahead and star 8, and I'll get you unmuted, and you can ask Spencer a question. Michigan, do you have a question for Spencer?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, it's Hope. Not for Spencer, but that was extremely interesting. I'm trying to hold on till the other question, period.
Okay, I'll go ahead and put you back on mute, and then when we get done with Spencer, I'll give it to we'll do another 30 minutes and then switch topics. There's a lot of questions. California, I'm going to come to you. Hi, California. California? Give him a second. Okay, we'll come back to you. Princess Lash. Hey, Texas. I'm going to come to Texas. Hi, Texas.
Yes,
Texas?
thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. I wasn't real close to the phone right away.
Happens all the time.
Hi, Spencer. No, have you been to South by Southwest many times?
Yes. It's incredible.
Okay. Yeah, because I live here in Austin, so I do know. I actually had a temp job, and so I actually had the opportunity to work by Southwest. And I do think it's a very good idea, but for some individuals that are really heavily targeted, they're just a target downtown for if you're going to have a lot of TIs join you. All I know is every time I go downtown, I get severe attacks, especially down by Google and that. And a lot of the venues and stuff are all around by Google and that. Well, they have them all over the city.
Dave, I'm sorry to hear that. I've heard from most TIs that when they're in groups, the targeting diminishes, and that's been my experience.
No. See, what happened is they started building that medical college, and they're not done yet. That has 15,000 employees, and they're about halfway through. And in the last 2 years, Austin is just really hitting everybody that are targets and nailing them. They get paid bit money. You'll actually see them on their cell phone, hitting icons and everything. I mean, it's just crazy. But it's a tech city. They got a lot of gamers here and everything. Yeah.
I mean, General Motors had a biomedical division, back in MK Ultra.
Yeah, they're still here.
General Motors have a biomedical division that was participating in MK Ultra. Then you look at the, Vietnam War. They were prototyping all these sensors on the Ho Chi Minh Trail that are engaged in targeting and tracking humans. Then you look at the ridiculous cover stories of Project Stargate and Grill Flame, where they took the greatest laser scientists in the world and said they were studying magical mind-reading abilities for 20 years. No, that was a lie. They were studying how to, manipulate minds and read minds of electromagnetic weapons. And the FOIA documents, which you can find on the CIA's website, they're free and legal. They show as much, the parts that aren't redacted. So, and then you look at the size of lasers. I was reading a book from the 1980s the other day. Lasers are the size of salt grains. And, electronic devices can be actuated from many thousand miles away. Back in the 1960s, we controlled electronics on the moon, the lunar rover, from a little nondescript building in Houston. So, you know what, based on informed research, this stuff is being built or added into, our electronic devices, our TVs, and our automobiles at the manufacturer's level. That's how they maintain the ubiquitous. I mean, they don't even need to go in our clothing because it's in just all our cars and TVs and modern electronics, because the microelectronics revolution has allowed for the miniaturization of this. And that's how they keep the constant targeting going, whether we're in a plane or a car driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour across state lines.
Yeah. I mean, it is in our clothing, too. Have you ever went to the website NanoWork, WERK? They let you know of a lot of the new stuff coming out daily. I received the newsletter.
I mean, that's not necessary, but I haven't researched that stuff. But I mean, it's not even necessary for it to be in our clothing, for it to be as ubiquitous as it is now. But I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, but I do appreciate your stuff. I was just a little bit more curious, if you're real familiar with the Austin area.
I urge every TI to go to South by Southwest. It's a very open-minded, liberal place, and you've got the First Amendment behind you. I talk to people openly about this stuff. I wear shirts advertising this stuff. I hand out flyers advertising this stuff. I stage rallies. Never had a problem. The targeting is the same as the targeting is everywhere. They torture me with electromagnetic weapons wherever I am. That's just the fact of life. Gang stalkers, whatever, I ignore them. I laugh at them unless they're committing an overt crime, which is, something you can report to the police, which they don't do because they like to maintain their plausible deniability, which was, studied in COINTELPRO and Zergetzen. So I encourage every TI that can afford the time to go to South by Southwest, and I will, as the date approaches, I'll be announcing a meetup for TIs that are at the conference, and hopefully we can all attend James' workshop and speech on Software Defined Radio.
Oh yeah, I do think it's a wonderful idea, and it does.
It's an incredible experience, and I mean it's. Whether you're interested in film, music, and the major portion of the technology, it's an incredible experience and an incredible town. So don't let the fact that you're a TI scare you away. Austin is a great place. I'm sorry that you had a bad experience or two, but I've run into many TIs, and it's been a positive experience, and I've educated a lot of people. And because it's tech-savvy people there, they're a lot more receptive to this stuff and understanding of this stuff than the general public. And they're curious. They want to know more. They want to, hear about the website, even if they aren't TI. So go to South by Southwest. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're definitely correct. The group that's after me, I'll be honest with you, the Sanctuary City. And I even had some sand people come up to me saying they hate America. I'm paying them to be here. And I think the people that are involved on attacking me is the ISIS, the Mexican drug cartels, and the outlaws. And the outlaws distribute all this stuff to the gangs. I'm a former federal whistleblower. So it's the highlights and the lowlights together. And they get a lot of the gangs people doing the perping and the pranks and the street theater and all that. And that goes all the way up to Washington, because when I was working for the federal government...
It's terrible. We're in an invisible gulag, basically. We've been neutralized in this gulag with invisible walls. It's no different than what the Soviets did to people that, had integrity, because the corrupt Politburo boss of that region didn't like them. They thought they were getting too much loyalty. They were pushing for too much democracy. They would, ship them to the gulag. And once color television came around, and what were the Kissinger went over there in the 70s, or the PACs that were formed. They had to change up their tactics a little bit, so they developed their Zet things, and they developed psychiatric reprisal, where instead of shipping people to gulags, they would use these psychological terror tactics that are used on us, the break-ins, et cetera, the druggings, and or they would just throw people in psych wards, because, as we all know, psychology or psychiatry is not grounded in the scientific method. It's completely subjective. It's a group of people who vote on something based on just, that's heavily influenced by the drug companies. There's no empirical measurements. So, those tactics arose, and, they've been copied by criminal elements in our, deep state and our power elite and our globalists. And they're not all corrupt, but there's enough of them to form this cabal that's carrying out this heinous domestic terrorism conspiracy that's ruining all our lives.
And I agree with you there. They're not all with it. There's good people in the government, and there's a few bad apples that are making everybody's life miserable.
Listen, can I butt in?
But I'm going to let you talk to somebody else. Thank you so much, Spencer.
Hey, you're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Can I butt in?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was going through some of my older emails, and I found this one, and I thought that you would be greatly interested in it. It's called, hang on a second, let me scroll just a little bit here. It's called, company's called Argonne, ARGONNE, National Laboratory, and it's affiliated with Northwestern University. And the title of this is Millimeter Wave Remote Biometric Identification and Tracking, RBIT, it's called, System for Security Applications. Now, the first little blurb that it comes out with is it says novel. I don't know why they say that, but it says it's the first system to remotely identify and persistently track a subject while recording his or her heartbeat, respiration, and movement. Secondly, non-intrusive, it senses through clothing and many common optically opaque materials, including masonry. Able to conduct long-range surveillance, it can take measurements from tens of meters away, and the camera, hang on, I got to scroll, maintains its aim when obstructions partially or temporarily block its field of view. Operates under harsh conditions. It works in darkness and daylight. It is not affected by atmospheric conditions such as moisture, dust, and smoke. Portable. The entire system can be rapidly deployed and adapted to covert operations. Fast response time. It provides real-time, on-the-spot measurements of biometric data. Reliable and secure, it uses advanced feature extraction and data analysis algorithms that are nearly 100% accurate in identifying humans and more than 98.8% accurate in identifying heartbeat and respiration patterns. Adaptable, it can be integrated with existing vision-based biometrics and pardon me.
Interesting. Is that a patent, you said?
Now, wait a minute. Let me finish. And video surveillance systems. Many potential applications. It can be used for biometric security, battlefield triage, to search for vital signs after disasters, to monitor a patient's heart condition and movement, to combat identified theft, for online monitoring of operating machinery, and to monitor vehicles to avoid collisions. And then it goes on, blah, 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 blah. What did you want to know?
You mentioned the source of this technology, Argonne Laboratories, and I was curious if this is a published journal article or a patent, or what the source is.
Not a patent. It's just a web page. It's from Northwestern University. Let me see. March. This was put out March 2012. I saved it. The address is 9700 South Cass Avenue, Lamont, Illinois, 60439. And you can contact Susan, BAKHTIAN You want the fax? You want the...
Just download the web page and take a screenshot of it and send out the URL in the chat room, because I'm compiling all scientific studies and patents related to this weaponry for the class action lawsuit I'm organizing. So I'll definitely add that to the list.
I've put it in the chat twice now. So it's
okay, great. I'm not on the chat, but that means I'll be able to get it with the chat archives from chatgrabber.com.
If you give me your email, I'll send it to you right now.
I'll just grab it off the chat grabber.
Oh, all right. That's fine. Enjoy. Talk to you later.
Hey, that's an interesting piece of information. It's fascinating that they were so open and discussing that. Thanks for bringing it up.
Wait a minute. This is the only article. This is the only time I've ever seen when it has been mentioned. This is the only thing I've ever read. And I've read a lot, believe me, on these devices because I wanted to know what the weapons were. This is the only article I ever read that said that it will go through clothing, many optically opaque materials, including masonry. It also talks about recording his or her heartbeat, respiration, and movement remotely, and persistently track a subject.
There's hundreds of articles that talk about this, but not everyone's a little different. Electromagnetic radiation can penetrate.
I haven't found them. You may have, but I have not. So this.
I'm compiling a database. What was your name again?
Barbara Gillette.
Barbara Gillette.
Memoir.
Oh, okay.
I'm Memoir. You know who I am.
I think you've messaged me on Facebook.
What?
Are you on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah.
Gillette.
Yeah.
You,
okay, great. Yes, awesome. I know who you are. Nice to talk to you. Nice to put a voice to the.
I think I already posted this on my Facebook page, and I also posted it in the group that I have. It's called Resonance. RESONANCE, I think it is. Resonance.
Oh, yeah, I saw that message you sent. Cool.
So if you want to go into my Facebook, you can probably download it there, and that goes for everybody else, too. I sent it to Ella and Karen Stewart, Romola, Mike Mason. I sent it to a bunch of people. So enjoy. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Thank you.
I have a... Oh, boy.
What, Ella?
I'm having a little problem with the board. Hold on. I'm having some problems. Hold on just a second, guys. Okay, let me see if I can gain some control. Hold on. I have to log out and get on a different computer, guys. Hold on just a second. Okay, I'm just letting it reload, and hopefully I'll be able to see people on the board, because sometimes when you get kicked off, as you guys probably have heard. Okay, there we go. I don't see everybody, but I see enough. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Hazeltine. Hold on just a moment. Hi, Hazeltine. Do you have a question for Spencer?
No, I'm sorry. I just came on. But I do have a question, and I'm not sure if anybody can answer it. I thought I saw an article that talked about if the program didn't work on you, they would start over with a new program. Does anyone have any feedback on that?
Okay, hold on one second. Sorry, it's a little hectic here at the house all of a sudden. Okay, I'm going to come to Matthew. Hi, Matthew. Matthew?
Hi, I can't answer that question. If I was just trying to get back on to. I'll wait until we're on the other topic.
Okay, hold on just a second.
I just like to say there have been TIs that have returned to their normal lives. So don't buy into the myth that this is always forever. I mean, Dan Leibowitz, he was on the medical advisory board of Derek's former organization, Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance, and he became an activist, and it freaked out the perpetrators because he was being very effective in his activism. So they stopped torturing him, and he went back to his career and has a wife and a beautiful baby. So no, that's not necessarily the case. We're not doomed. These traitors carrying out this program that's trying to enslave and purge as many people as possible are no more invincible than the Nazis were. The Nazis were all haughty and all powerful in 1942, and in 1946 they laid in ashes. So stay optimistic.
No, I was just more interested to see. I had seen something, and I can't find it now.
I mean,
that was written.
These criminal thugs in the deep state doing this to innocent civilians can do whatever they want. Right now, as
a little muffly. Little muffly, sir.
Very muffled. No, I think that's the wrong direction. I saw something that did talk about it. No, I was with Derek when we originated 2005, but there's other things I've just been trying to put together that people have been asking me. And I did see a conversation written, and I'm not quite sure where, and it did talk about that they will start a new program on a person if they feel it's ineffective, that the one they're in.
There are a lot of people that they have not done that to. They can do whatever they want, but that's not set in stone. So I wouldn't even worry about that. I'd just stick to peaceful legal activism, stick to your values, and all atrocities in the past have gone away. I bet this one will go away eventually if we stay smart and stay organized.
Yeah, I'm sorry I disturbed you because that isn't the information I needed, but thank you.
Well, I answer your question. No, they don't restart the program because I can give you a lot of examples of TIs that haven't had the program restarted on them once they broke free.
That's why I wanted to recheck the information that I did read, and that said that I wanted to find out. I tried to look at it. It just seemed to disappear from my computer, which happens often.
Yes, I know. They delete files from my computer, too.
I just wanted to see who wrote that, and if anybody else had read it, too. I thought maybe there was a good chance someone else found that. And it was a nice article, and I was really shocked when I read that part of it. And I thought, gee, I better go back and look at it, and where is it now? There's a good, on Scientology, they're talking about mind control a lot in Scientology.
David Voice mentioned that as well regarding Scientology and how some of the methods that Scientology uses on its, former members resemble the COINTELPRO gang stalkings. There's that some organized stalking tactics that they use on, or maybe not Scientologists, but criminal elements in the spy agencies or the deep state or whatever you want to call it are using. So I think that's a good thing because it'll help people understand what we're going through.
Yeah, because this is a group of people that have left and but the harassment was they followed them, stalked them, and they just came right up into their face to take photos. So it's much more aggressive and overt than ours is.
Well, it's something to check out. Thanks for that info.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to come up to West Coast Angel. Hi.
It was kind of hard to keep abreast of the topic. This is Cindy in Sacramento. What is it, Ella? Hello.
Well, Spencer's going to South by Southwest in Austin, and do you want to give a question about that?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to go next year. It just all depends. But to summarize in a sentence or two what we're talking about, it's called software-defined radio. It's a way to detect and scan the electromagnetic spectrum around you for much, much cheaper than you could in the past. So this is opening up a whole new realm of possibilities for TIs to, gain proof of the assaults being carried out against them. And I'm specifically mentioning a guy I came across who's putting out some good work named James Brown, who's been selected as a finalist for South by Southwest, which is a huge deal. If you are in the tech community or the venture capital community or any people, in the upper echelons of the economy, they really respect the information coming out of South by Southwest. So it would be great for him to be discussing this topic, not only to educate the public, but to put out a good workshop that we can learn from and adopt for our needs. So, this is a new form of radio detection equipment that runs on your computer instead of extremely expensive standalone hardware. And I'm urging everyone to vote for the guy so his speech is selected. And there's a very good chance. I've advertised it, and he's gotten a lot of feedback and votes. And you can find a link to James Brown's talk on SDR directly from freedomsos.com. It's the first article that you'll come across.
Okay, the thing, what was simple, was when James Lico suggested to download. Was it James or Neil said to download a spectrum analyzer? Is that in an application?
Yeah, a spectrum analyzer is any piece of equipment that shows you all the electromagnetic radiation going through your body or in your environment within certain frequency bands. So, we have radio broadcasts, TV broadcasts, cell phone broadcasts, our smart homes, IoT, cell phones, and plus the electromagnetic assaults that are being carried out against us. That's what a spectrum analyzer detects. It's old equipment. The federal law enforcement agencies know about this equipment. They're clients of the companies that make this equipment. They could easily use it to end these domestic terrorism attacks on targeted individuals, but there are no directives from the people at the top to do so. So it's a very great atrocity that's being ignored right now. So spectrum analyzers in the past were these standalone hardware devices that were incredibly expensive. Like some were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in recent years they've come down to a few $1,000s. But the revolutionary thing about SDR, which is basically a spectrum analyzer, is you can run it on your computer, and a lot of the software to run it's free. So that's why it's a game changer, because most TIs and most people can't afford to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a piece of equipment that might not even do the trick. But with this new SDR stuff, I've heard prices as low as $25. These people, researching it aren't selling it. They're just putting the information out there on what to use and what to buy. And it's advancing every day and becoming easier to use every day. So, yes, this is a spectrum analyzer that runs on your computer, and the acronym for it is SDR, which means software-defined radio. And so it's basically a laptop-based spectrum analyzer, which makes it a lot cheaper, but it's still just effective.
Well, James Lico or Neil said to download, EMF detector, and I did that. I downloaded a couple of them off of Google Play, and the perps living below me went crazy. They lost it. They started scurrying around, running around. Cars started running, driving through my complex after it was really still, and most of the time, because all these perps are around, all these military operatives, and all of them sitting in their house watching you on real-time live feed, probably hooked into your own electricity. Okay, so they lost their minds, and somebody actually was underneath my bedroom. I'm in my bedroom. They're downstairs. And what do? Have a couple people sitting up in a unit right next to you, below, beside, whatever. And a car screeched up, picked up somebody. They ran out, slammed the front door. And this is all below me because, the units mirror each other. And they took off. And one person took off. Then another guy was sitting in there, like, banging around in the room. And then the next day I went outside and I was like using the EMF detectors, pointing it everywhere, and then they started with you cannot be recording my car. They stepped out on the patio right next to me, 10 feet away from me, and started the drama, the street theater, all of that. And so it was really bad.
I can relate whenever I engage in effective activism, and that tells you you're doing something right. the torture increases dramatically. And the most torture I get is when I start, I continue work on the class action lawsuit. So you know what that tells me?
Okay.
That tells me that's the most effective tactic we can pursue. But they do it when I do other things as well. And so the fact that they increase the torture when you started researching Spectrum Analyzer, that tells you that, you're on the right track, because they don't want you doing that stuff, because, that could potentially give you hardcore forensic evidence that, could blow their whole system apart, figuratively speaking.
Yeah, they all moved out as soon as I moved. As soon as I moved.
You know what?
Yeah.
Just remind yourself this, short-term pain, long-term gain, it's tough to go through those periods of intense torture, but you know what? Would you rather suffer 1 month of intense torture or 10 years of mild torture? I'd rather suffer 1 month of intense torture than 10 years of mild torture. And so, it's just that old saying, short-term pain, long-term gain.
Well, they all moved out quickly. They all moved out as soon as I transferred across the property. Of course, they wanted me to be in a unit as I transferred ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. They wanted me to move in front.
It's not necessary for them to be anywhere near you. I mean, we controlled electronics on the moon, which is 250,000 miles away in the 1960s from a brick office building in Houston. So, these devices have been so miniaturized, and they're going into all our TVs, appliances, and cars, that they can be controlled from thousands of miles away at the speed of light, and the speed of light can travel two-way before you can snap your fingers. It's, milliseconds. So, they like to misdirect you, and they do this to a lot of people. They make, you think it's your neighbors or something. It's called sheep dipping. It's, one of the first things they do to target individuals to, discredit them. So when they figure out how the program works, people look back on their sheep dipping phase and say, remember when they said all those things about people who really weren't doing anything? That person's discredited in our eyes. So, it's possible that the people doing this to you could be living next to you, but it's not necessary, and I don't think they would take that risk, especially knowing, how far the technology's come. As I mentioned earlier, I was reading a book about lasers that can be the size of tall planes, and the phased array chips that can direct them in beam form being the size of raisins. This is civilian technology from 2007.
But can I interject? Wow.
Really, there's some bad background noise.
Crazy. My father was no, I don't. My father was a scientist in the military, okay? And so I noticed when he comes around that they would get hop, skipping, and jumping as well, okay? So I think it is what you're saying, sir, that it's from over the horizon or satellite or whatever, or drones, okay? But I think they also have handhelds, and I think it's mounted in vehicles sometimes.
That was a little more common in the 80s and 90s.
In the 80s, 90s. Okay, now it's not. Really? Why would they be hopping around? I'm debating you. Why would they be hopping around if he's coming around? Maybe there's the behavior. Maybe they're afraid he's going to really recognize it. And because he's a powerful man, he's going to be able to say something. And he is a half a whistleblower. My father developed some laws against animal cruelty, okay, before he retired. And I'm not going to say exactly what it was, but maybe that's why they targeted me, because, his work.
I think they target as many people as possible, to be honest with you. And it's an old psychological warfare tactic to make your victim think that they did something wrong. And I understand
on one hand, yes, sir, but on the other hand, no.
I can give you kind of a quick social explanation of kind of how the program progressed. After the church committee hearings of the 70s, they had to play it real low key. They had to stop the civilian experiments to a degree. So they focused mainly on military members, and they were very interested in military members for a lot of reasons, because, they're in the military, they signed non-disclosure agreements, and, going through the 80s. And plus, they didn't want these military members developing this technology under the cover stories of Stargate, Grill Flame, and SDI, which is, colloquially referred to as Star Wars. They didn't want them revealing this technology to the public, so they would monitor their homes. And, when they were monitoring their homes, they'd monitor their kids. So that's why you find so many military kids stemming from the 80s who became targeted individuals, because, after the MK Ultra hearings, they had to be a little more careful in their treason. So, Into the Wild, have you heard that story? Everyone's read it, by John Krakauer, about the kid who ran away and ended up in Alaska after touring the country and died in a bus. His dad worked on the satellite programs in SDI, so they were monitoring his dad. I'd bet my right leg that guy was a TI.
Thank you for that reference, because I'd like to, read some things, and I appreciate that. Because I heard about, like, if you're a GI, you're government issue, right? So then you sign over. You're right.
Well, you are, but many people believe that, and but that was, 80s and 90s. Now things and technology has advanced so much. Even in the civilian sector, just imagine with how it's advanced in the classified sector, and they've got an army of 5 million people with security clearances working on this with no oversight. There's a handful of billionaire senators whose lives are a bowl of cherries who don't want to rock the boat by taking on a 5 million man army that can kill you and make it look like an accident. So they basically have no oversight. So, you know what, it's basically what Ben Rich of Lockheed Skunk Works says, their technology is 50 years ahead of us. So they don't even need to do it that way anymore. This stuff's built into our electronics in our cars, and it can be actuated from a bunker outside of Washington, D.C., or in the Nevada desert or Southern California at the speed of light.
Thank you. I respect your opinion, sir. I respect what you're saying highly.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Okay, guys. So now we're going to go and talk a little bit about Justin Carter and his video, or any kind of opinions you want to give. So hold on just a second. I know Matthew wanted to touch upon that. Okay, Matthew, you're unmuted.
Hi. I wanted to make a comment on Brian Coffran. And by the way, I really appreciate all that information, Spencer. One of the things I think you said was that one of the things that you emphasize over and over, which I really agree with, is that we're trying to get the government to do their job to protect us from crimes. And one comment that I'd like to make about Brian Coffran, I believe is his name, is something that I normally remain quiet. I normally don't like to get into the fray, but I'm going to not do that this time, and I'm going to get into the fray on this because this is very important and because this is something that I have expertise in. Brian's thesis in his video was heavily about the technological basis of targeting people was through their DNA. That is false, uncategorically false. That is impossible, and I will make a few comments on that. Now, why I am being so emphatic about this is because false ideas like that actually are irresponsible, and they're dangerous. So I have a good intention in my heart for saying this. When we accept ideas like that and we start to propagate them, those ideas are dangerous for us because they will impede this thing that Spencer was emphasizing, and that is getting the government institutions and the public to get on our side. And I think we're making progress in that direction. But if you think about this from an outsider's point of view, when they hear something like that, especially if they know about biomedical research, when they hear an idea like the resonance of DNA, individual DNA sequences, individually specific, is used as some kind of locator antenna, and that these companies are collecting DNA sequences so that they can target people remotely, on the basis of their DNA resonance, that idea is wrong and ridiculous. Okay, so let me walk through this a little bit. Now, I happen to have worked at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, which is probably the second largest biomedical research organization or institute in Seattle, which is where Brian said that this went on. Now, also, I will give Brian the benefit of the doubt. He sounds like someone that did come from the other side and may have information on how a security company-based harassment network works. But his allegations would be, I hope he hears this, because his allegations would be way more powerful if he did not go way out on a limb and state with absolute certainty that he knows that this is how targeting is working, because there are many reasons that can be refuted. Okay, so let me just go through those reasons. First of all, why do people think that DNA is the source of targeting? I think I know the answer to that. First, we all know that DNA can be sequenced and that you can identify people with it. So that's the individual identity and recognition part of it. Also, you might look at a DNA sequence, the double helix, and you might say, wow, that looks like an antenna, and that's a really long molecule. So that's like an antenna in our body with an individual signature. And if you actually dive into this deeper, you will find published research that short segments of DNA do have characteristic resonances, and there actually are technologies that can determine the length of short pieces of DNA based on their resonance in an RF field. Okay, well, that's all fine, but I can pick each one of those apart. First of all, DNA in our bodies is not like the long straight strands that you see in diagrams. It is hyperfolded around histones, and it's very dynamic. It's in different states of exposure depending on which genes are being expressed, and that's very dynamic. It's like rolled up and then rolled up on itself again and then rolled up again, and it uncoils, and it's very dynamic. So there's no like fixed physical structure to it that could have a fixed resonance on that basis. Second of all, the biophysical properties of the DNA would be largely coming from the composition of the base pairs, A, G, C, T. Now, those ratios are very, very essentially identical between one individual and the next. And then the third thing is those experiments on the resonance are done on purified DNA, short strands in test tubes. And yes, you can do resonance, and you can get the length of those 10 base pair sequences in those conditions. That is completely different from the way that our DNA and our chromosomes is in our cells. Some of our cells don't even have DNA. Our blood cells don't even have DNA. Now, excuse me. Let me finish this, please. This is an important point, and I want to finish my point here. So, for him to claim that he knows how this is going on, there's also problems with that. First of all, why would someone on the security side of things, he sounds to me like he might have seen gang stalking to a certain degree on the perp side. Well, why would someone like that have access to the classified, let's assume this is classified technology, because that's the counter argument, that me with my PhD and my working in genetics at a top research firm, I currently work at one of the largest biomedical funding agencies. I've been working in biomedical research my entire life. I know a lot about this stuff. And so the counter argument is, well, Matt, there's classified technology that science doesn't know about. Okay, let's consider that point. Well, for that to be true, then the biomedical industry, something would have had to be kept from the biomedical industry that can make a lot of money for a lot of people, and somehow the intelligence community would have had to keep something so big like that, so potentially profitable, secret for so long that you have now the entire biomedical research community unaware of this. And that doesn't make sense to me. But even if that were true, why would this guy have knowledge about something that secret? Anyway, I think I've made my point. And the last thing I want to say is that why do I think this idea is dangerous for us? Well, what I've heard over the last couple of weeks or a week or two, and I've heard this before, but this idea of DNA-based targeting, it seems like this guy, Brian Coffran, has lent credibility to that idea, and a lot of people are talking about that. And I think we're getting closer to help from government institutions. I think we're marching closer to getting the public to be aware of this. But when that becomes now an idea that we accept as a community, people in the public, when they say, oh, this community thinks that they're being targeted based on their DNA, that is grounds for them to actually dismiss what we're claiming. That's why that's a dangerous idea. Now, I don't mean to discredit this Brian Coffran. I think he actually did himself a disservice by claiming that he knows how the technology works. And I don't normally make such emphatic statements. But quite frankly, this isn't something where I have expertise. And for me to remain quiet about this is for me to tacitly approve of these ideas, and I do not approve of them. They're dangerous for our community. That's all I have to say.
May I say thank you, Matthew. Your straightforward approach is so appreciated, and I think us getting way out in left field on some theory that some guy brought up is very scary, and does these odd theories that pop up do hold us back. It holds us back from getting help. If we just present loud and clear the logical information, that's going to get us so much further than. I thank you so much for saying what you said. That just makes me feel safe.
Add a little bit to that too, if I may. If you go over to DNAfrequencies.com, she actually shows the mathematical formula to get the resonant frequency of pathogens. And she has the proprietary thing, so when I can't find frequencies to program into my Rife machine from years of practitioners that have just made them available, I go over there and look on her list. But at the beginning of her site, there's a place you can click on and it shows the map. What you were saying about the antennas and all that, I've heard is quite true, and is a personal signature that ends up giving us a MAC address.
Well, it is true that macromolecules do have resonant frequencies. I don't dispute that, but I just think that when it comes to DNA in the body, there are serious limitations to using that as any kind of a targeting or antenna-like device. Now, if you're talking about activating dormant pathogens using resonant frequencies, often the resting stages of bacteria, for example, are encapsulated and hard, and they have a distinctive structure, but the structure of DNA in the living cell is highly amorphous, and there could be classified technology that the entire biomedical research industry is unaware of, but according to mainstream scientific knowledge, using DNA resonances for targeting, it just defies all of known science.
Yeah, we have a couple of books that are way over my head. I'd love to see people working on this that are capable. You have a background that's That's so good for doing this. But the purpose of DNAfrequencies.com is to give us frequencies to blow up the pathogens using a Rife machine, just to clarify.
Okay, so that's DNAfrequencies.com?
Yeah, it's a lady.
Okay, I will check that out. I'm trying to prepare a lecture for the Boston conference in which I take this scientist's approach to asking critical questions about all this technological basis of the bioeffects. And I've already thought a lot about this, and I think using published peer-reviewed literature, you can actually build a basis which goes a long way to providing reasonable and defensible explanations for targeting. It doesn't go all the way to the exotic effects, but it goes a long way towards those effects. And I think that that approach, that bottom-up approach to presenting our issues, is the more tenable and more defensible approach, which will help get mainstream support. And then we can leave the more exotic effects for investigation once we get those institutions on our side. That's my preferred approach, and that's the
good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I'm with you, Matthew. When speaking to the public or calling the press and trying to get interviews for all you guys, I keep it really simple, and I pick people to go on interviews that keep it fairly simple and have the data to kind of back up what they're saying. But I'm a little more open-minded. There could be some kind of classified type carrier waves or something that might be able to do something like this. We don't know for sure, but that's just me. I'm a little more open-minded, and I do think the deep state can hide anything. I think that's why it's the deep state. And so that's just my opinion, and I know it differs a little bit from you, Matthew, and Linda, but you guys will love me anyway.
Last comment, I'm kind of losing my voice. The last comment that I want to make is that it is useful to explore these kinds of ideas, and targets have done an impressive job of figuring this stuff out. But my worry is that our chatter behind the scenes on these calls and whatnot, I feel like we can do a better job of being more responsible in that kind of chatter, because that is what leaks out into kind of like what the community consensus is. And if the community consensus is accepting any and all wild Rube Goldberg machine type ideas, then that's how people on the outside will see us. And I think we can do a little bit better job. It's difficult because we're basically crowdsourcing these ideas. And hey, I just got to call it like I see it. And in my informed opinion, DNA-based targeting is bunk.
Thank you, and I know how much research, and I know, we've had long, thorough discussions about all your previous employment and all the different things you've done. So I know you have the background in these areas, and I really appreciate it.
And it also one last thing. It also points the finger potentially at the wrong source, which is also counterproductive. Because I think a lot of this targeting is more mundane than biomedical companies having a conspiracy where they want to collect all of our DNA. I think a lot of this is actually more mundane criminal groups that have access to this tech, making these technologies homemade and whatnot. So anyway, I have concerns about this, but.
You probably need a sip of water.
I'm glad you're reaching.
Can I say something about it? Can I say something about the DNA? This is James Lico. I started looking into this a couple of years ago, and I don't know why you're saying that it doesn't make sense, because, the first thing that clued me in was when I listened to and read some stuff about Dr. Konstantin Meil. He's a German researcher. He's done a lot of work on Tesla technology, and kind of, I don't know, maybe duplicated it. I don't know. But he said that the frequencies around 2.2 to 2.45 gigahertz were the frequencies to cook meat, and that was because of the DNA, I think. And people think that it's these are his words. People think that it's the frequency that heats water, but it's not. It's the frequency that heats DNA.
Well, let me make a distinction, because I'm not at all saying that radio frequency does not interact with DNA, but I think Brian Coffrin's thesis is that each individual produces a signature resonance pattern which can be used for targeting them with a broadcast signal, basically. And so I want to be clear. Radio frequency can affect DNA for sure. It can. But what I think Brian Coffrin was claiming is that signals are broadcast, and a certain frequency signal will pick out one individual, and that's the idea that I say has no basis in science.
Okay, that's the idea I say seems to make the most sense. But
that's right.
I know a lot less than you do, but I don't know. I just had it demonstrated to me by I can be next to somebody and they're getting blasted and I'm not, or it could be just the opposite. And let's see. I was the house I lived at in 74, 75, maybe 75, 76. This person came over and kind of tricked us into letting him do some work, and he opened up the sewer pipe and took out I believe he got a sample of my DNA feces and sent it in, and after that I began feeling my colon was being accessed, and they couldn't do that prior to him doing that. And he was telling me that we blocked up the toilet and whatnot, and the way he took away, he wanted a bag to, from what I could tell, take out a bunch of paper that was in there, but when he was done with the bag, it was just like he was taking away a sample of DNA to send in, and not to do what he said. So yeah, and after he did that, then I felt my colon was being accessed and greatly expanded, and I, it just seemed like they were doing colon research now, and and they can access me in the other way, the ways that many TIs know about, but they were actually accessing my colon, and it was, I don't know if the DNA in your colon is different than the DNA elsewhere, because they seem to have my signature. They always want to get my DNA. Every place I go, and doctors are in on this too. I've had doctors in the Seattle area. One sent me to get a colonoscopy, and which I didn't do, but they're always asking me to do stuff like that. Anyway, I don't want to say too much because it just erases the point. But it just seems to make a lot of sense to me, but I can't prove it, and I don't. I have a degree in biology, but that's nothing. It's just the basics. So anyway, thank you.
Hi, this is Connie. Can I say one thing? While I respect what your opinion and what your stance is, and I'm not a doctor, I don't have a medical degree, but I worked around a lot of them, and I know a lot from the places that I worked at. They are collecting DNA. And actually, I got injured at the FDA, and I went to the doctors. I asked them to do a blood test, and they did a DNA test. I didn't ask them to do a DNA test. Next week they're collecting seeds, and there's a seed bank, I guess, in Iceland or something with all the seeds. They are collecting people's DNA, and it is part of the bigger picture of targeting. And there's many YouTube videos that support it and articles. I researched the other side when I realized I was being targeted severely in 2014 and 15. I wanted to learn about the other side, almost like a profiler. And they are collecting DNA. So, and that is part of this targeting. So if you don't think they're not looking for people, they're collecting people's DNA, then, like I said, it's part of the bigger picture.
This is why I normally don't like to get into the fray, because if you listen to what I said carefully, I never said that they are not collecting DNA. Genetic medicine is big right now, and they do genetic tests all the time. I never claimed that they're not collecting DNA when you go to the doctor. So just because they're doing that now does not mean that that's linked to targeting. And just because there's a lot of YouTube videos doesn't mean that the information is correct. It means that the ideas are propagating, and that's why I'm concerned. And I will raise my voice, and you can take what I say or leave it. But from now on, when something having to do with targeting is in my area of expertise, I will comment on it.
Oh, okay. One thing I've often thought about.
Well, that's good, Matthew. I just want to say that if it seems to me you're not discounting or ruling it out, because can it be done? I mean, can't they if they wanted to access DNA for to actually kill some people and not others, or do something to some people and not others? And these are the people who would do anything if they could do it. They would kill anybody. They would hurt anybody. They would do anything to anybody if they could do it, and rule out some people and not others. They love that. So is that
the logic of your idea makes a lot of sense. And by the way, I just want to make it clear, I am a TI, and I know how sadistic and damaging and harmful this program is. And if they could broadcast a signal and pick people out based on some characteristics without having to implant them, absolutely they would. But we're getting into an area that's not supported by any evidence that we can provide. And so my approach going forward is going to be to build a bottom-up system where I can say there's published research, and there's a ton of research on bioeffects of RF, and you can build up a pretty good case, especially when you combine it with precise through-the-wall radar, which is where there's technologies springing up all over the place, and we can demonstrate that, and you can already build up plausible scenarios for targeting that go a long way to explaining what's going on. And so I don't see the need to basically construct these complex scenarios that are speculative. And do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. I'm just trying to inspire or recommend a more prudent approach to what we make our claims to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're trying to tie various genotypes to behavioral responses, so they can create an AI system, to use the buzzword of the day. I think they want to see if they can establish just generic scripts that can be automatically run by machines. If this person has this DNA type, let's use this program on him to enact our subjugation and enslavement program, because the other people who have had very similar genomes to this person have responded to these types of torture or have been susceptible to this type of assault on this type of organ. And I think I think I agree with Matthew here because it sounds like Brian Coffin or Justin Carter or whatever he goes by is saying that like we're like cell phones. If you put two cell phones next to each other and you call one, both of them aren't going to ring, and that's due to our DNA alone. I think we can be close to each other and targeted because of directed energy. I mean, phased array, beam forming. There's implants that are likely in all of us. There's smart dust. It's not. I mean, they can track people by the vein structure in their body using hyperspectral imaging. We all have unique vein structures, but I don't think that the DNA acts as like what do they call it in a cell phone? A SIM card, that allows you. That's kind of the fundamental basis of the targeting. I think it's more that they're doing behavioral studies, that this person with this genotype, responds to this type of torture and psychological warfare. So when we encounter another person with this genotype, we can use that same script on them and tell the computer that, the autopilot system that, is torturing these people and picking up their signals and sending the appropriate response, to drive them under our thumbs and to subjugate them and to make them our automatons. So that's my view of why they're so interested in DNA, just so they can build up scripts based on our various genotypes.
And I think that makes a lot of sense because when I left the agency, they were very interested in pharmacogenomic research and studies. So what you just said makes a lot of sense. And if that was Spencer, I really liked what you were saying earlier in the call, but not to get off topic, but I am. When I talk to people about targeting, I don't really talk about targeting first. I talk about EMF sensitivity because I'm EMF sensitive because of what they put in the body. I've been implanted from head to toe. And people believe me. I've convinced family members of others, TIs, their father, their sisters, their daughters, that, their loved one is not crazy, that it doesn't have a psychological or psychiatric condition.
I know what you're talking about. You know what I start off with? I start off with a kind of a indirect question. I say, do you believe that electromagnetic weapon? Now, this is what I say. I say, do you believe that electromagnetic radiation can affect humans' biological systems? And people might say yes or no. Then I say, what are you seeing right now? You're seeing 500 terahertz. Well, the visible light spectrum is about 400 terahertz to 750 terahertz. That's the most incredible, thing ever. 500 terahertz radiation can create vivid images and colors in your mind. That's more incredible than anything they do to us with any of the other frequencies. So that alone, and you throw in some other stuff, and I appreciate the compliment, and I hate to, sidetrack from Matthew's speech now, which I found very interesting. I didn't know you did biomedical research, and I'd love to exchange some ideas, and I'm curious if you've ever done any biomarker research regarding, the changes that appear in the DNA after exposure to EMF frequencies and whether reversible or not. But anyways, that's an interesting approach you take as well, talking about EMF sensitivity. But, you can also start with the analogy of visible light being just electromagnetic radiation like everything else. The Pulitzer Prize-winning book is such a great title, All the Light We Cannot See. There's so many meanings and themes to that book.
And I haven't done biomarker research. I'm sorry, real quick. I haven't done biomarker research myself, but I'm definitely researching, or you could say reviewing the literature. That term research gets used inappropriately sometimes. I'm reviewing the literature. I have access to all the literature, and the emphasis on biomarkers is a very good one. I've heard you emphasize that a lot, and I think that's great, because when law enforcement and social institutions start taking this problem seriously, the biomedical research industry could easily ramp up the research and come up with a suite of biomarkers which would essentially prove exposure to radio frequency, and that will be a tool, that will be a logical tool that will evolve when this is a recognized crime. At present,
that's a great term, a suite of biomarkers, because like one biomarker is high triglycerides, but that can be caused by other things. But I'd love that term, a suite of them, because if you combine so many biomarkers, whether it's chromosomal changes combined with high triglycerides, combined with a benign adrenal tumor, then you get this undeniable suite that is definitive proof that you've been exposed to electromagnetic weapons. That's great to hear that you're aware of that issue and focusing on the literature in that area as well. That's encouraging.
So can I just say one other thing for the average TI? If you get an AM radio and you put it on 540 AM, so it's slight white noise, and scan things like your microwave when you're using it, when it's off. I don't have one anymore. Your phone, when it's just sitting there and when you're using it, you're going to hear noise that you can't audibly hear with your ear. And that energy, those pulsed noises, do affect our body, because our body is electrical. And if EMSscientists.org, not scientists plural, but EMSscientists.org, I was in contact with the director many times, and Martin Blank put out, and 190 scientists and doctors around the world put out a plea requesting that countries and the United Nations lower the standards, because our bodies cannot take all this radiation, and non-ionizing and ionizing radiation cause cancer. A woman being exposed to over 60 hertz, and if you think of what runs in your house, everything runs on 60 hertz, but if you're exposed to over 60 hertz, then your chances of getting breast cancer are highly probable. And so one of the first things I did was get a really cheap electromagnetic radiation detector called DT1130. I scanned all my switches in my apartment in Maryland, and everyone was giving off like 12 or 1,500 hertz. I had cancer in 2009. So if you use an AM radio, if you use a cheap electromagnetic radiation meter, and it turned out the switches in my apartment, an electrician came in, and out of 13 switches or 14, the ground wire was removed, the ground wire and the screw was removed, and that's why they were emitting a lot of electromagnetic radiation. But people really need to protect themselves against this, because it does cause cancer, and it causes many other diseases, inflammation and arthritis and vision problems, memory problems, sleep disorders. The list goes on.
Paul Brodeur wrote a ton of books on that back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. You should check them out. You can get them used for $1. They're great, and they confirm everything you're saying.
Well, yeah. I totally agree, too. The literature, I've been slowly working my way through it, because I'm trying to prepare a talk for the Boston conference, and the effects on the body are pervasive, and they affect all kinds of different systems. There's no argumentation from me there. And also the technological ability of radar systems to track you and to even track your some of your bodily functions are amazing as well. I'm just trying to put my informed opinion out there to set limits on our speculations. So yes, the microwave signals, pulsed microwave signals, messes up the body, especially the bioelectrically active tissues. in horrible, pervasive ways. No question about that.
Ella, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm right here. Sorry.
I'm glad that you are having this particular talk tonight. The book that they're trying to publicize, what is the name of the book?
Well, I'm not sure which reference you were making because I was a little distracted, but we are talking about the confession, the most recent person to come forward, Justin Carter. He has a couple of videos out or audio recordings, and he discusses some of the information that we were discussing. So we're just debating on some of the topics that he'd brought up in some of these audio recordings.
Okay, because I live in Florida, and I've been trying to bring awareness to people about the radar system being used against people's bodies. And these gentlemen are right on point when it comes down to a biomarker. It's my personal opinion that when we go and give blood and we go into the doctor's office, they're magnetically testing our blood tissue for biomarkers so that when we're out and about and we're targeted, this weapon picks up on your biosignature in and about the grids that they're beginning to develop in the city limits, the smart grids off of the power lines in the homes, as well as the dish network televisions. So if someone is trying to bring this awareness to the public, it is much needed.
That's not exactly what we meant. We meant studying biomarkers as proof that, the victim's been exposed to electromagnetic weapons. But I think, there's a famous quote by Ben Rich. He ran Lockheed Skunk Works Department, which was their, silly name for their high-tech, advanced research department for decades. He said in the 1960s we could track a baseball from 5,000 miles away, and technology's just evolved exponentially since then. And we've got tens of thousands of satellites in space with hyperspectral imagers with wide HD lenses that can take real-time recordings of entire cities. And we've got chips in our cars and our phones and our teeth and our surgical screws and our vaccine locations. It's not really necessary for, Kofrin's assertion to be true. DNA plays a role in the pain caused by electromagnetic weapons. It's something called like ion cyclotron resonance or calcium efflux, something or other. I'm not an expert on that field, but I have, a general knowledge. That's what causes, the pain when you're hit by these weapons at the base level. So DNA does play a role in our targeting because of, the electrons that, make up the core atoms of our DNA. I think it's more of a sociological and behavioral interest in our DNA, so they can program their AI systems into running assaults on people with similar genotypes to make the total enslavement of humanity more automated.
May I say something? Hello.
Hey.
Of course.
Yeah,
Hi,
I think
this
it's
is
just free discussion. Yeah, go ahead. Everyone talk.
Okay, this is Melissa in Oklahoma City. Hi.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. So this is newer TI, and her name is Melissa, and so I'm so glad you're on the call.
Thank you. Well, I just came out of the closet, so to speak. I've been targeted for quite a while, but in the beginning of my targeting that I'm aware of, I there was a heavy Sandia component to my targeting. I had a lot of people from Sandia suddenly milling about me, and it was odd. A graduate from OSU, Oklahoma State University, went to run part of Sandia's, I think their psych labs. So they have a partnership with Oklahoma State University, and Oklahoma State University is also the main university that studied Morgellons. I'm bringing up Sandia because they have a program. I started researching it, and they have a program called Umbra, and within Umbra is 3 different programs, I believe, Dante, Sherpa, and Scream. What they are doing and at Sandia, what this program is, it's a 3D battlefield simulation for a post-apocalyptic event where they are studying behavioral responses, tactical movements, choice of technology, like what would a person do given this post-apocalypse situation. And it's pretty advanced and significant. So when I'm hearing you talk about the DNA and the fusion with the AI, Sandia came to mind for me personally, because there was a connection to that, and because I thought, oh, that's what they're doing. That's interesting. They collected my DNA at a doctor's office too, but interestingly enough, I had been HLA typed as a possible bone marrow donor for my son. And I thought, why? They claimed they were doing a genetic pain study to see how certain medications affect your genes. So I never got the results from it. I gave my swab, and they never got back to me with the results of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a scarier hypothesis put forth by the chief medical officer of Intel. He recently gave a speech at DEF CON, the largest computer security, biosecurity, hardware security conference on Earth. And I didn't even know Intel had a chief medical officer. And he says that, with a person's DNA, you can look for certain genes and you can engineer a retrograde virus, like a virus that's activated by a certain trigger. One common example would be the herpes virus, which is activated by stress. It's called a retrograde virus. And, once they have people's DNA, they can target certain genes. They're different racial groups. I forget the exact scientific terms. Asians and, Jewish populations, they get screened to make sure they don't have the same gene to create this problem. The chief medical officer of Intel said, one potential threat that we could face with people that have our genome, our personal genome, is that retrograde viruses could be created, that only affect us. And there's always been this kind of desire among the power elite towards depopulation that goes back to, Scrooge McDuck and Charles Dickens. And I can give you more recent quotes from, Prince Philip and even Ted Turner about how the human population needs a culling of 90%, and it's disgusting, and it's not how normal, good people who built the modern world think. But, sometimes these elitist, corrupt globalists and, rotten apples among the bureaucracies, think, hey, if this person isn't my slave, we have enough technology to make his position redundant. We don't need huge million-man armies to go invade Mexico or Canada any longer. A cruise missile launched from a bunker in Tampa, Florida, can do what 1 million ground soldiers can do. These people are irrelevant. They've lost all sense of morality due to corruption from wealth and power. So, this has been a theme that's been expressed in a lot of films, from 12 Monkeys, which has a ton of PI themes underlying it, to, the Kingsmen, that, they could be, studying various gene types to see if they can tailor-make retrograde viruses that would just wipe out a certain, targeted portion of the population while leaving the so-called criminal elites alive. Because they could do it with nuclear weapons, but that would leave, a wasteland for them to inhabit. So, the chief medical officer of Intel was speculating that, that could be a very realistic threat in the future, especially if someone has your DNA, in addition to the AI program we were talking about earlier.
Well, what Brian Coffrin, what he was saying was that they were collecting the DNA from employees as well, and it occurred to me the other day that the numbers line up if there were such a thing as a global depopulation program. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying if there were, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that some global elites have that in mind. The numbers line up in our favor, actually, because maybe we're the ones that are going to be saved, and they're going to exterminate the gang stalkers. I mean, the numbers would suggest to me that they would get rid of the criminally minded who would do stuff like this to another human being. I mean, it's just a thought. I'd like to
make a comment on who just was talking about the dormant tendencies for diseases, because I actually think that has been done with me already as far as the targeting. I'm just throwing that out. Second thing I wanted to say is, I am not a scientist, but I have no trouble believing the DNA thing that Brian came out with. And it reminded me of an article I read in the paper the other day. A thief went in and he stole a lot of money and tied an older woman up. He used the bathroom before he left, and he did not flush the toilet. Now, they didn't say whether it was urine or stools, but they found him with that.
Well, they have touched DNA.
This is just a local paper. These are just local cops.
Yeah, but, there's a lot of discrepancy between what Brian said and what we already know. And I think it was you, Barbara, who told me that Melinda Kidder, according to her research, said that 90% of targeted individuals are implanted. That she's
done, yeah. She's done
right.
Like 150 and something like 6 did not.
Right, so 90% are implanted. So that really tells us that is playing a role in targeting. Okay? Another thing he said was he seemed to think that the gang stalkers were private security workers. And I can tell you for a fact, in my case, that's not the case. But I pretty much know who's doing the gang stalking. I'm not going to say it publicly, but I pretty much know. And it is not a private security firm. So, this is all very confusing.
Gang stalkers are people from your everyday life that are just tortured and traumatized with this weaponry and allowed to return to their lives if they commit these heinous gang stalking acts knowingly or unknowingly. That's who gang stalkers are. I mean, when my targeting began, the torture was so bad that I handed over my life savings in cash in an anonymous gym locker. And, I could only imagine what they could get some felon to do who doesn't have any option, who's maybe an illegal immigrant. With 1 week of this torture, that guy would be willing to do any crime that the perpetrators set him up to, especially in this economy. College grads can't get jobs. And 10% of the population are ex-convicts? That's about 30 million people they had to choose from who really have a weakened position in society. So that's 30 million people they could torture at will, who really aren't going to be listened to by law enforcement. And with a week or two of this torture, they can get these people to, start doing these heinous breaking and entering crimes, or they can target illegal aliens, and the illegal alien knows that, every time he's pinged by this electromagnetic weapon, whether it's once a week or once a month or once a year, because he's in the right place at the right time, he needs to drug someone or move something around or, to freak someone out. Or, it's just everyday people that they turn into these gang stalkers. And some of them, they can do it, without them even knowing what they're doing through remote influence technology. But a lot of them have been conditioned to do it. It's not some, private force. And, that would lead them to, too much exposure. Why take that risk? It's not necessary. Anyone who's been targeted, all you have to do is put one and one together and realize that, for every one of us that's speaking out against these crimes, there's probably 10 to 100 that have been tortured by this technology and allowed to return to their careers as long as they perform a corrupt deed on behalf of the people in the command and control centers when called upon occasionally, or more occasionally if the person has a weaker position in society, such as, a felony conviction.
That's right. I have noticed that too, Spencer. A lot of the people that were targeting me were targets. There's no doubt in my mind. I watched it. I saw them being targeted. Some of them lived with me. And, I had one woman in here who coughed for 1 month straight. And there was nothing physically wrong with her. She was a target. And she was here, I don't know, she was trying to do some behavior modification on me, which I resisted. But I've seen this happen. I've also seen people that aren't targeted and probably more likely to be involved in some of the community policing groups that are springing up all over the place. There's 7 billion targeted individuals on this planet at this point.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't aware of it because with this directed energy technology, you can put an image in someone's mind and simultaneously associate it with an emotion such as hunger, which triggers a certain behavior, which synchronizes their action to time with your arrival. So it appears to you like they've been conditioned and sold their soul to this satanic cabal that's running this program. And, it's clever, but, and it's hard to tell the difference between the people who are just being pulled around like puppets with the remote influence technology and those that have been tortured and conditioned and are knowingly responding to commands.
Right. By the way, Spencer, I wanted to tell you, I just want you to get this. Are you still working with the last time you were on Ella's call, you were talking about unclassified, declassified CIA documentation about experimentation that they did, maybe with remote viewing, and you said they're handing us this on a plate, on a platter. Do you know what
Absolutely.
I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God, that's the icing on the cake. I mean, they released 12,000 documents through the Freedom of Information Act relating to their Stargate and Grill Flame programs. And they were released on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration. So all the media was paying attention to Trump. and no one really paid attention to this big data dump, and it amounted to about 12,000 different documents, and it's incredible. It's the smoking gun almost. I mean, it is the smoking gun. I've seen. I mean, there's so many documents. I haven't gone through every single one, 12,000 documents, and each one's a couple of pages, you know. So I'm looking at about a 40,000-page book. I can hardly get through a 400-page book. But I've, you know, skimmed through a lot. And, you know, it's the parts that aren't redacted, and why would they redact elements of a program that they poo-pooed as a failure? You know, they talk about electromagnetic equipment. They talk about, you know, the stuff that's being done to us. I mean, it's any jury. I mean, we've got so many different categories of evidence, from the whistleblowers to the credible victims to the confessions from the MKUltra hearings to the FOIA documents to, you know, the people like Robert Duncan who worked on the technology, to biomarker analysis. In a jury, you know, isn't bound by, you know, I mean, a jury just believes what they know in their heart is true. And we've got thousands of, you know, just heart-wrenching tales to go along with all this evidence. And we have jurisdiction in every city in this country, because there's victims in every city in this country, and you can refile the case in every city in this country if for some reason one jury gets corrupted. So, you know, there is I mean, that's the key to victory. That's a surefire way to victory. And I'm trying to organize it, and they torture me more than any other activity when I try to organize it. So that tells me that I'm on the right track. And those FOIA documents play a good role in that.
There's a resource you should know about. The last time you were on Ella's call, I told you about it, and that is that Robert Duncan took the Stargate experimentation and dissected it and explained every facet of it with his inside knowledge, and it's very good. Somebody has put out a web page with a transcript of that entire process. I actually tried to send it to you on a comment on Facebook, but I don't know if you got it because, you know, my Facebook postings are so compromised. But it is at the top of my Facebook page at the moment, and my Facebook page is under the name of Roseanne Marie, and we're friends already.
Yeah, I recognize.
Look at it. It's the top. It's the. I haven't added anything so that you could find it because I wanted you to find this. It is the transcript, and he goes through every line of that document and explains exactly what it means. And I think it would be useful for you. So have a look for that. You know,
yeah, well, I mean, the problem is there's 12,000 documents, but I'm glad that he cherry-picked some of the more damning ones, and I'd be glad to look at it.
And also, I just wanted to mention that since there's so many intelligent, technical people on the call, a while ago, a man who was in Mexico across from Brownsville, Texas, said that he had an EMP machine that could knock out implants. And he was very quickly discredited, so I let it go. Just recently I saw a video, and this was one of the organizers of a group called BASIS, and I'm not sure what this group is, but I do know that Robert Duncan gave a lecture at a conference that they had about AI. So I think they're pretty high up in the scheme of things. Anyways, one of the head honchos at Basis put out a video saying he wanted targeted individuals to know that EMP can be effective in knocking out implants and could actually free you from a lot of this technology. So I wanted to know if anybody else knows anything about that.
Yeah, I actually bought a $1,000 EMP unit and tried it, and heard from somebody else who knew somebody who bought that $18,000 one on what is that Amazing One website, and it wasn't effective. But we may be dealing with such a variety of implants.
Yeah, that guy did say only older implants.
Oh, did he?
Yes. Or somebody talked to him or whatever, but the word I got was not all implants, just older ones, some older ones. And so I just interrupted because what Neil said sounds right, according to that.
Yeah. Well, I let it go because it seemed like the man in Mexico across from the Texas border there was being discredited. So I thought, well, unless someone goes down there and tests them out, we're not going to know for sure, and I don't think anybody's going to do that, so I let it go.
Yeah, just look up.
Yeah, but I'm sure he doesn't have an $18,000 one like Neil just mentioned.
No, he has 9 coils on each side, and he's claiming to cure Morgellons. And this is so multifaceted that it's overly arrogant to even say that. I called him up because the main Rife frequency, 2114 hertz, is used by many practitioners with Rife machines to help with Morgellons problem. And I said, you're advertising an EMP unit that's tuned to 2114. How did you do that? And he said, well, it's actually not tuned to it. And I said, well, you should take that off your website. So he's done some really intricate stuff. I just think he has a less than pure heart, because if you look up Michael Chapala on the Internet, you'll see many complaints of people that sent him money and never got anything, or what they got didn't work. And
I'm not advocating for him. I'm just wondering if there's anything to the technology that he's talking about.
If that's true, that EMP devices can knock out implants, then I'm free, because my gang stalkers, the ones that are following me around with the handheld devices, I mean, I've been hit with a full Tesla before. And what I do with my electromagnetic field readers is I take a picture, I take a screenshot of the reading when I get pulsed, and I take a picture of where I'm at and who is doing it. And I have in Oklahoma City, they're carrying them around. They have these thugs, and I don't know, they're street thugs is what it looks like to me. They have like the homemade ones. They've knocked out my car. They've done all sorts of things. But so if that's true, then I must be really healthy.
Right.
Because they've been pulsing me. And
actually, you can buy those units on eBay. Somebody sent me a couple of links.
You can build them at home, apparently.
Well, sure, I did. I took a 1 million volt stun gun and made a coil with enamel-coated copper wire, and we pushed the button and do it in places where we were getting readings of a possible implant, or at least a signal being in that spot. And I also took 1-inch square 50-pound pull magnets based on something I was told to test out, and mounted them on a Lexan or plastic little round disc, and put them on a dishwasher motor that spins at 3,100 RPMs. And when we notice, pain in your hip or some particular thing when somebody walked by with a smartphone, because my garage door is always open, so I see, I'd go over and stand by that, and I didn't find relief. But when I put my cornet meter up near it, and the meter pegged. It was too much milligauss. Too much magnetic.
Well, Neil, you should. I did notice one night on Facebook, and this is way above my head. I am not a technical person. I did notice that Robert Duncan and Dwight Magnum were having quite a conversation about what they were putting together, and it had to do with coils and Tesla coils, probably. So you might want to get in touch with those two people. They're sort of working together to come up with something. And
well, you know, I was reading in Russia and China, you know, they've outlawed these weapons as lethal in other countries. And one of the things I had read was a Tesla dome over a city would protect from these electromagnetic pulses from satellites. Now, I don't know what it does if people are walking around with them in their hands, but a Tesla dome is really just a matter, I think, of running certain frequencies and sort of encapsulating the city. Now, I don't know if that's true, and I don't know how that affects the inhabitants of that city, but I know that other countries have experimented with that. Has anybody heard of that?
I haven't, but if we could apply that, I built a geodesic dome on top of a garage for a music room years ago, and you just use the metal pipe that they run wires in. It's called EMT pipe, and it's cheap at Home Depot or Lowe's. And then there's instructions. You cut the pipe and flatten the ends with a hammer and drill holes through them, and then you bolt them together. And that's how the frame of this was made. If we could come up with the field you're talking about, we could build enclosures to sleep in if it would give us enough relief, but there'd still be a problem from below.
I did read that several people had maybe built them around their homes, but I'm not 100% certain about that. Look up Tesla Dome, city protection, Tesla Dome. DOME.
So is this Tesla dome creating frequencies or just some kind of like copper or whatever protection?
No, it's not. It's not like that. It's an invisible field. It's like a dog fence, sort of like the same concept as the invisible dog fence, sort of. Only we don't wear the collars. It just creates a
being out of frequency.
Well, it creates the electromagnetic field that sort of counteracts.
Right.
It creates.
Has anybody tried the magnets hanging from a ceiling fan rotating yet?
I did.
Did it work?
I don't know, but
it won't block everything that they're shooting into your home because it's in one place.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to decide whether to try that next. Okay.
You need an oscillating fan.
Yeah, and also it's fan, but with magnets hanging down on strings, so the magnets are going around.
An oscillating fan. You're getting pulse radiation that comes through the walls, floor, and ceiling. It's not just in one place. So if you get the magnets and you mount them on the blade somehow, where they don't come off with the gravitational pull of the blades being spun at the RPMs that your fan is spinning on, and you get the fan to oscillate side to side, it will block only that area that they're shooting from with the magnet.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done it again.
That's why I'm trying to figure out this Tesla field thing, you know.
I think the best bet would be a zero Gauss chamber. Have you ever heard of a zero Gauss chamber?
No.
Yeah, don't they have those in the government and stuff? You know, they have those rooms, right, where they can go in and there's
a skiff room. That's a little different because you can still get various electromagnetic fields and even the Earth's magnetic field, which is also called the DC field.
Oh, wow.
The cool thing about a zero Gauss chamber is it blocks everything. It even blocks the Earth's magnetic field.
How do you create?
These devices are sold by very mainstream legitimate scientific laboratories. The only problem is that they're the size of a shoebox or smaller. But, based on, people I've talked to that sell the materials to make these devices, they have constructed zero Gauss chambers based on the same principles that, are used to create, they're used basically to reset Gauss meters that, with probes. Like if you have a Gauss meter that reads DC fields, you need to kind of calibrate it or reset it by sticking it in a zero Gauss chamber. That's one use of it. So that's like the scientific industrial use of it. And it consists of 3 tubes of mu metal that are inside of each other. And, based on my research, and I truly believe it could be with 99.9% certainty, foolproof way to gain passive shielding. So you don't even have to worry about generating any type of active electrical signal. So, in the schematics I've kind of drawn up in my mind's eye, I kind of view a tanning bed, but it's kind of constructed on a plywood frame or on sandbags with sandbags or cotton bags separating each of the tubes, kind of like a Russian katina doll that fits inside of each other. And it's just a bigger version of 100% proven science. So if you're in a zero Gauss chamber, that means absolutely no magnetic, no electric, no electromagnetic energy can get in or out, and it's passive. So you aren't having to worry about power or anything. And rough estimates I've made based on material cost, if I do it myself, which shouldn't be too hard, just creating 3 tubes and 3 lids, I might need the help of a welder, run about $4,000. So I haven't done it yet, but I got a quote from a contractor who sells, it's made of mu metal, which is an alloy that's used in EMI, electromagnetic interference shielding. So it's 3 tubes of mu metal, and it's just a bigger version of these devices that are proven to work 100% in blocking all electromagnetic radiation, all magnetic fields. And once you're in one of those devices, there's no conceivable way that you can be targeted. There's just absolutely no conceivable way.
Yeah, does that include scalar?
I was just going to say, does that include scalar?
Well, a scalar wave is just a wave without direction. It's not a vector. So yes, it includes everything. The Earth's magnetic field could be viewed as a scalar wave. And it blocks that. And very few things. A Faraday cage won't block the Earth's magnetic field. A anechoic chamber won't block the Earth's magnetic field. But a zero Gauss chamber will. And, as I said, these are real devices proven in hard science, but all the ones you can find are, a lot smaller than you'd need. But, based on the principles of the design of the smaller versions, all you do is you just build a bigger one with more mu metal. And based on, the prices and everything, what I would urge you to do if you're interested in this is just Google it and see what they look like and see how they're made and say, okay, well, this one's 1 foot long. I'm going to need one that's 7 feet long, and I'm going to need 3 of them. And there's bulks, wholesalers of mu metal, mu-metal on eBay and Alibaba, and you'll get the requisite materials. You'll weld it together. You'll build some type of platform with plywood or sandbags or cotton bags to separate the layers. And, based on my research, I think that there's a 99% chance that could offer 100% complete shielding.
Couldn't you start off with something smaller, just big enough for you to sit in as a prototype to see if it works?
Well, the dimensions I've done are just basically something to lay in. If it was something to sit in, it'd have to be a lot taller. And all the designs for the zero Gauss chambers I've seen require tubes, because I don't know why they need to be tubular. Perhaps it's something to do with the rotation of the magnetic field of the Earth. It's a cost that I can't afford at this moment. My funds are tied up, but it's a project I'm going to pursue very soon. That and getting to the radio quiet zone of Green Bank, West Virginia, that's a cheaper option if you need some temporary relief. But I'm really interested in this zero Gauss chamber, and I'd urge people to look into it. It's hard science, and it's a larger version might be the ticket. And if it's something, I'm trying. I talked to these contractors, and they wanted to charge me like $40,000 to build one, and they've said they've built them before. And I said, hey, give me the name of a client, or don't even give me the name. Call a client for whom you've built one of these chambers, and say that I'll pay him $100 to sit in an hour, or and just to see if it works. And then the guy was like, I don't know. And I said, look, if you do that, I'll pay you $100 just for finding the guy as well. These salesmen, and they sell these low volume products. I'm hoping that I'll find someone who's built one so I can try it first. But I'm 99% sure it will work. But it is a lot of money, even at $4,000. I wish I have some money tied up in retirement that I'm liquidating. So here in the future, I probably will be constructing one. But until then, I urge others to research it, because I'm very confident it might offer a 100% foolproof passive shielding solution. And I'd love to hear Robert Duncan's comments on it, because I haven't found anything that discredits it or debunks it, or any negative stories that they don't work. So, I've messaged him, but he's so busy that and we've never really been introduced, so he hasn't gotten back. But that's something to keep in the back of y'all's minds. I hope y'all do.
Yeah, email me at electricrose22@yahoo, and I'll do my best to get you connected with Robert.
Awesome. Yeah, I got your email. I'll do that.
Anybody who's
okay, guys.
assertive.
I have lost control of my board, so I'm going to give us like a 10-minute warning, because I can't unmute anybody. I can't even chat anymore. So, but let's, we'll close it at like another 5-10 minutes, and we'll go ahead and end the call at that point.
Okay.
How many people are on, by the way?
About 100. Still 100 people or so. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I wanted. Ella, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Linda.
Okay, hi. I heard there was a geneticist on the call, and I wanted to bring up another scenario that's being used on me, and I wondered if I could talk to you privately also, and that is that they're not looking at trying to kill me with some kind of genetic retrovirus. What they did is, or what they threatened to do, and what they have done to me, is they went through my genetic profile and looked at all my strengths and looked at all my weaknesses, and then they started destroying all the strengths in my DNA.
I believe it.
And that's the scarier thing. And I mean, they went through all of my my intellectual strength, just how I handle situations, what I receive from my father, what I receive from my mother, which I knew I could feel it in my own body. I don't feel it in my own body. I don't feel my mother and father in my body like I used to feel. And so that's kind of the scariest thing, is having them go in and break, all the things that make you a strong person, a self-reliant person, all of that. Those kinds
and then
of
they
things.
take your weaknesses and expand on them.
Right. So that's kind of a different kind of genetic hacking. And I know that I had spent some time talking to Magnus Olsson, who knows what's happening in the European group, and the genetic hacking is really big in Europe. And it doesn't seem to be so prevalent in the U.S. possibly as it is in Europe. But he said almost everybody in Europe is genetically hacked.
Oh, my
So that's
Linda, you're unmuted.
Thing. What was that?
I was just telling Linda she's unmuted. I'm just sitting here babbling at myself. Thank you.
Hi, Linda.
Oh, Linda, before you just a minute, I just want to say one thing about the guy in Mexico. I'm sorry, I thought it was muted, but thank you. The guy in Mexico, the $500, if you go down there, he can fix anything that's wrong with you. At least that's what I heard him say. He also fixed a woman that had Morgellons, and she was coughing up the heads of, was it salamanders? Yeah. It was some sort of an animal that she was coughing up, and that came from, he said, that came from the chemtrails. So you really, it's like, whoa, I don't think so. Like they drop eggs of a variety of things from those chemtrails along with the aluminum and barium and all that. I just want to tell people, I so agree with what Matthew said. We got to be careful. We got to be careful.
And I've heard a lot of complaints. I would hope nobody's going to go do that. I mean, I have a friend who sent $100 for a magnet, but finally I left the guy a message, and finally he sent it to her. But I would not suggest that. I wouldn't recommend it, and I haven't heard a positive thing yet.
And anybody who sees a salamander head being coughed up by a woman, either he's really delusional or he's playing us, that's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I just think that's probably not something.
Or it's a really strange occurrence. But other than that occurrence aside, I just haven't heard anything good, and people just...
It could have been a tapeworm head. They look similar.
No, I don't think so.
Definitely
the salamander head is not a tapeworm head. It's a big difference in size. No.
So I have a question
real quick. I wanted to ask the geneticist if they are looking into that as a potential problem, just hacking the public or hacking individuals and just hacking them to a point of incredible weakness, or hacking our culture into some kind of...
Linda, he doesn't buy into that at all. He does not ascribe to any of it. He says microwaves cannot do that. Absolutely not. And so he doesn't buy into that at all.
I don't think it's being done with microwaves. I think it's being done with other kinds of tech.
Yeah, but just his experience...
Regarding something James Lico was saying about the frequencies that cook meat, I was wondering if anybody's heard of those ovens. I think they're called New Wave, but I think they're infrared. But I'm wondering if somebody tested those, cooking meat in one of those type of ovens, if that would give us the frequencies with, that they might be trying to cook us with.
Yeah, get an infrared detector and watch for what's around. Even infrared on digital cameras. I don't know about all of them, but I know on some of them they do show up. I mean, they were showing really simple, just to take your remote for your TV and maybe it wasn't working, and you could take a picture and it would show whether that beam was working, since we don't see it with our eye. But we should know much more about light-based weaponry than we've been paying attention to, I think.
I think infrared cameras are really important. I have infrared security cameras, and my outdoors one that was pointing down the hill picked up a really bright light showing towards my house, but I couldn't see it with my bare eyes. And I thought, well, there we go. There's one of my, people, because it was in infrared light. Infrared can see infrared.
and that light was not visible to my naked eye. So my best guess is that was an infrared weapon somehow coming my way, you know.
So but frequencies can be measured with that, right? Can't it, Neil?
Be measured?
Well, I mean, to detect frequencies coming from infrared, can you do that?
I don't know about that in particular, but there is one person that wrote me and said that they were seeing this red light coming in through their window, and I said, pull out your meter and see if you get readings, and she did get readings. It wasn't for like a spectrum analyzer to get the frequency, but the intensity was up very high, which proves that. She said the closer I got to that light with my meter, the higher the readings went up on the Cornet meter. So what you said, it looks like it's being used to deliver harmful frequencies from what I know at this point.
Well, if you've got the red, on the color spectrum, and then you've got the blue, they're going to each have their own frequencies, or variations thereof.
That's true. Yeah, it would cover different.
You would need a light meter, like you use to test for photography for a flash. You can take a light meter, and that would give you the frequency of the light.
Huh.
So,
well, that's interesting.
I wonder if we could compare that to microwaves, to find out what kind of frequency or whatever they're using to cook us with the microwaves.
Well,
Melissa,
were you? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. I was just going to ask Melissa. I think that was Melissa talking about the light meter. Can you just get a light meter? Where do you go to find one of those?
Radio Shack, any photography store. Yeah.
And it's called just a light meter?
Yeah, I think you can even get like an app on your phone that's a light meter. It'll test. So, when you take a picture, you want to have the flash right and your white balance right and all of that.
Right.
And you can take this light meter and it'll measure the light around you. But if you're going to use it for the purposes of, say, if you see a light coming in your window, or even if you don't, you can just take this little handheld light meter and it will give you readings of the light so you can then adjust your camera lens. But the other use for it would be to detect light that maybe you can't see. So,
like scan your windows, scan your room, that kind of thing? Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Whoa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I've had a lot of time to look this stuff up.
Well, so have I, and haven't done any of it.
I know, haven't we all, right? So I wanted to ask a quick question before this closes out, because I feel like the Brian Coffin thing, and I really hope he's legitimate, but I also feel like that's a little bit of a distraction.
Yeah.
And from the TI survey. And I want to ask, have you all taken it? What was your experience afterwards? Because I noticed that as I'm going through all of my information and documentation, it's a little bit traumatizing, again, to think about, oh my gosh. And so I'm having to process and kind of take it easy on myself for mental health purposes so I don't get completely traumatized. But I've noticed there seems to be a lot of frenetic activity around me every time I begin to go through the stuff and start to fill out more of the survey. So I wanted to ask what anybody's experiences were, if they've filled out the survey, if they're in the middle of filling out the survey, what's the gang stalking been like around you?
Well, I didn't notice personally. It was just more emotionally traumatizing, and also when I was trying to save the information, it didn't save, so I had to stop and take a break so I wouldn't get too frustrated, and I went back and did it again the next day. So there's always some technical issues. Everyone has different things. People are sometimes having technical issues or aren't getting their passwords or things like that, but I haven't heard anyone say that their targeting was worse because of it. It just seems like they're doing a lot to try to keep us from doing those type of things, from taking the survey.
When's the deadline?
I want to say the beginning of October. I keep hearing different dates, so now I'm completely confused. But I know that it's right around there at the beginning of October.
Okay, great.
So, speaking of technical issues, I did not receive any emails from you, Neil, and none of my emails seem to be going out. All of a sudden, I'm having email issues again.
Yeah, I was looking for something from you, and I didn't see anything. I don't know what your email is.
Okay, let me give you. I didn't want. I've been using my Proton. Let me give you my. So, Spirit of Truth, 1776 @gmail.com.
Oh, I already have that one.
Okay. No emails coming. Try Octave, the whole word Octave, the number 8, biotech @gmail.
Octave what now?
8, the number 8, bio, BIO, tech, TECH @gmail.
Biohack what?
Biotech.
Oh, biotech.
Octave 8, biotech.
Okay, TECH, and then what's after TECH?
@gmail.com.
Oh, just at Gmail. You could also try writing me at my Proton Mail, which is also Electric Rose 22.
Okay, I'll try that. My Proton Mail is completely down this week. I don't know what's going on with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to answer the. I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay, 4 more minutes, guys. I really have to.
I just wanted to answer the woman who was talking about the survey. I took it at the library in one go. Yeah, it's hard to go through all the facts again. I mean, you don't even want to revisit it, but it's very important to do. And we're not going to have this chance again. So I urge everybody to do it. The reaction was, I came out of the library, I had very strong targeting. It was like a message. We do not like that you did that.
Yeah.
I sat down. I let it pass. I was in public, and in public, I just sit and let it pass. And it did. And after that, the targeting has been steadily decreasing in my life.
Huh. Wonderful.
When you put yourself on record by name and address with two people who have this much press and this much respect,
credibility
in the world, you're doing something to protect yourself. This is not just getting on Facebook and saying, help me, I'm getting targeted.
Right.
This is a lot more effective. So I please, everybody do it. I think it's for your own protection. My targeting's gone down since I did it. And that seems to be a trend. There are times when I'm reminded that I can be hurt, but anyways, that's my experience.
And it's unfortunate for all of us who can't get on the computer that we have not been sent out and may not be sent out.
What's that?
I said it's unfortunate for all of us who can't get on the computers that we have not been sent out the surveys, and I hear we may not be sent out the surveys.
Okay, how do you get the information for the survey online? Can someone throw out that link, please?
Ella, do you have it?
To get the to be able to you're welcome, Linda Costanzo. To be able to participate in it, number one,
is something funny? Because it's very serious, I think.
What? Cindy, I was commenting. What? Linda made something in the chat. Thank you for letting me know that her thing was unmuted. Anyway, so to survey, you just send your name, your address, and your phone number to globaltisurvey@gmail.com. And then if you'd like an instructional video, I know Kate Ryan has it on her channel. I don't know if it's under KATERYAN or CAIT.
And then also, I have it on my Ella Free channel. Just look up Ella Free Target Individuals.
So Global TI Survey at what?
gmail.com.
And who will send it out quickly?
You'll
be answered.
I use, kind of a standard analyzer you'd see on a company like Aronia's site, AARONIA, and they're a couple $1,000, and you've got to teach yourself how to use it as well, and different analyzers cover different spectrums, and so it's just out of the price range of most TIs, I'd say. I'm considering buying one for myself, or was, but that's a lot to throw a couple $1,000, and then to teach yourself how to use it. You probably have to hire experts. I mean, this, as my introduction said, should be performed by the government. They have no reason not to. It's a huge, huge red flag, and we all know why. It's because there's corrupt, rotten apples, a small percentage that are behind these crimes against humanity in the deep state or the military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. So, that's a hurdle, and maybe you won't get the right type at first. Maybe you have to experiment with a couple different times. We could be looking at, lots of money, or, I could. So, I've been hesitant to, throw, what remaining money I have into buying this expensive equipment that the government should be using to stop this domestic terrorism. So I've been looking for other solutions. And that brings me to the introduction that you gave about software-defined radio. It's incredible what's being developed by tinkerers, innovators, entrepreneurs, hackers, tech nerds, all these people, that flock to, these massive conferences like South by Southwest Interactive and many others across the nation. They're really, using, instead of a standalone device that, would be a spectrum analyzer in the traditional sense, that's a piece of hardware dedicated to it. They're using the hardware that's already built into our computers and just running, a free piece of software on that with, a very cheap attachment. I've heard prices as low as $20. And, this stuff is being studied by so many just citizen scientists right now. So, you know what? The answer to, the government, not the government, just, not because they're corrupt, but, the failure of the leadership in these bureaucracies to issue these common sense directives to deploy spectrum analyzers to detect and deter these domestic terrorism assaults. There's an answer that's springing up in the free market that's affordable. As I just mentioned, these people, doing this research and, studying this, hardware and this software and putting out YouTube videos on how to use it and building it yourself. And these people aren't selling anything. They're just telling you, what to buy at, Fry's or off of Amazon to build it yourself for, $100 or less or something. I haven't built it yet, but, I'm going to these workshops and I'm teaching myself that. So that's a game changer. And I've seen demos of this stuff in action and it works. And, these people are vetted and, it's grounded in hard science and, technology gets cheaper and cheaper every year. So instead of getting, standalone hardware that might have been $250,000 several years ago and might be, several thousand today, they're overlaying, software onto the hardware that's built into their laptops or desktops to do this spectrum analysis for, next to nothing, what you'd spend on a nice mill. And, they're doing it just for, they aren't selling anything. They're just doing it just to advance the knowledge of humanity, because technology is, advanced that far, and there's a lot of interest in wireless out there because, there's this term IoT, the Internet of Things, like your Amazon Echo and, your smart thermostats and, everything's going wireless. And, so there's a lot of interest in, measuring, what all electromagnetic radiation is going through us. And, these things can be repurposed and modified. And I was just speaking to another TI, and, he's done some of this stuff. He's repurposed some of the software-defined radio and to, detect the frequencies that are known to cause physical and psychological trauma in humans. And I forget his name. He's from South Africa. I was just speaking to him on Facebook. I just met him. He saw my post about software-defined radio, and he responded. But his name is Clint. We've got people in the community already that are familiar with the use of this. Clint McLean, but there's also people, in the Silicon Valley community, just doing this as a hobby, just because they think it's cool, and it is cool. So they're basically providing us these tools that are just a minute fraction of the cost, and they aren't selling anything and making money. They're just putting the information out there so we can do it ourselves. And they're doing it in a very easy way. And, 20 years ago, if you wanted to run a computer, you might have had to use a DOS prompt. Like, the software is advancing, so it's like there's a graphical user interface, and it's easy to use and understand. And this one fellow has been named James Brown, no relation to the soul singer. He's an engineer in Silicon Valley. I've read about his work. He gave a kind of a satellite speech at South by Southwest, which is a big deal. And this year, ever since the terrible events of 9/11 claimed 3,000 lives. I think we can all agree that preventing terrorism, especially on American soil, is a very worthy pursuit. However, countless tens of thousands have reported domestic terrorism in recent years, yet they are completely ignored by all of our agencies dedicated to protect us from these assaults. Why? Because the terrorism is being carried out with electromagnetic weapons, and no response directives have been issued. We all know that electromagnetic radiation, EMR, in the visible light spectrum can create colors and images in the neural circuits of our brain. EMR in the X-ray spectrum can cause cancer. And it is well known that EMR and many other spectrums can cause a whole range of different effects in humans. The official bodies know this and have studied and developed these weapons for decades. For example, the Weapons of Mass Casualty and Terrorism Response Handbook, released by a board of over a dozen mainstream doctors, acknowledges that these weapons have been studied for years, that they cause psychological and physical trauma, and yet they dodge providing solutions because they say they're classified. The solution is easy, however. It's called a spectrum analyzer. You can deploy one with a properly trained engineer in the dwelling of a victim of this new form of terrorism as one form of deterring or detecting these assaults. Let's look at the feasibility of this. Many electronics companies produce spectrum analyzers, and you can get a decent one for around $3,500 these days, which is a lot cheaper than it was in years past. A qualified engineer needed to set up and monitor such a device for a few days would likely cost, in this hypothetical, $3,500 as well. So that's $7,000 in all. Now imagine that our security agencies really wanted to get to the bottom of these growing domestic terrorism atrocities, and they decided to deploy these devices in the homes of 100,000 targeted individuals to prove them right or wrong. Many of these victims are very credible doctors, lawyers, professors, and military veterans, so it's the least that should be done. What would be the cost of that? In this hypothetical, you would multiply 100,000 people by $7,000 and arrive at $700 million. This is a large amount of money, but remember that every year our federal defense and security agencies get $700 billion. Therefore, the cost of doing a thorough investigation of these serious crimes would amount to 1/1000th or 0.1% of their annual budgets. Furthermore, there are over 5 million individuals in the U.S. with security clearances, bigger than the population of Norway, and a lot of them, or most, I'd say, have technical background. It would be a very easy matter to source just 100,000 to perform an investigation into what could be the greatest terrorist conspiracy in the history of our nation. The above example outlines the most thorough response. In all likelihood, a sample of victims amounting to 10,000 or 1,000 could be helped at first, and therefore the required budgets would just be $70 million or $7 million, respectively. If a country whose number one goal is fighting terrorism won't spend 0.1% or even 0.001% of its security budget investigating the countless credible reports of terrorism on American soil, then something is horribly wrong. Many researchers would even argue that these weapons that are no more exotic than chemical, atomic, or biological weapons are being used to create Soviet-style purges in the U.S. Sadly, it's becoming hard to argue with that contention, and survey data shows that the number of victims of this silent Holocaust are growing exponentially. So that's the problem we face. It's the problem that countless human rights activists have faced in the past centuries, or victims of atrocities have faced in past decades even. We knew asbestos was causing cancer and mesothelioma, yet due to moneyed and powered interests, it stayed in use for another, several years while 500,000 people died from it. So these kinds of atrocities happen all the time, and it's our job to study the tactics, the peaceful and legal activism tactics of the groups and people and heroes like Paul Brodeur, who exposed asbestos, or the civil rights marchers who got the vote for black people and other minorities, or even the women's suffragette movement. I was recently reading a book around the World War I era because, it's the centennial of when America entered the war. And, it talked about the women's suffragette movement. And, women in this country didn't get the vote until 1920. And you know what they would do to women who would hold up signs and protest, that atrocity? They would throw them in insane asylums. So these tactics that they're still using to deprive TIs of their human rights, they go back 100 years. They probably go back even further. It's the oldest trick in the book. So we need to take, comfort in the fact that people have been through this before and they have prevailed. And, that brings us to our problem. There's a solution to this. There's spectrum analyzers, among many other things, biomarkers, reproduction of the technology in a controlled legal environment, whistleblower testimony.
I just had a quick.
Yeah,
go ahead. What type of analyzers do you suggest?
Yes. Well, in the briefing, I introduced my speech with, I have background in some scientific areas, computer hardware and ham radio, but I've been in the business world. I was a successful university grad and businessman until my torture began 24/7 a few years ago. So when it comes to electrical engineering, I basically just follow step-by-step instructions. So that's why I love these people so much, because they're putting out YouTube videos and workshops that make it, very accessible to the average person. And, I'm becoming more proficient in it. And, I think anyone would become more proficient in it. And I like the idea of having, get-togethers and discussions about it. Clint suggested that. He lives in South Africa, so he's 7 hours ahead of us, I believe. So he couldn't make it on the call, but he's really got it down. And this guy James Brown, who I'm urging everyone to vote for, so he can get him South by Southwest. And I believe those panels are recorded, so we could all watch it from our home and see exactly what he does step by step. So anyone could do it. And there's some electrical engineers like Neil Chevrolet in the community that are working on this. If we can organize our efforts, but I think breakthroughs are coming. I don't want to build up people's hopes and say this is going to solve a problem right away, but this is on the horizon, something that's definitely going to be a game changer.
Does one
so
truly
if you
need
have any
30...
ideas on organizing discussions or committees in a way that is practical, I'd love to connect because that's important. Just check out. Are you on Facebook or anything?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Well, you can give Ella your info, or get my Facebook link from Ella or something. I don't know if Ella in touch.
You're a little bit muffly, Spencer. As the time has gone on, you got a little more muffly. Is there any way to?
Can you put us in touch via Facebook if I email you, Ella? Do you have his Facebook details?
Sure. Yes, I do. I have all his information. No problem. Yeah, just email me.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Spencer. Sounds good.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Okay, and if I haven't gotten back to you in the past week, or if somehow I promised to get back to you and I didn't, please email me again. I don't want people to slip between the cracks. I try to pride myself in, answering everybody and getting back to everybody, so just email me again if for some reason I didn't follow up. Okay. Thank you, Tide. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Okay, I'm going to come on to Mr. Neil.
Oh, hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good considering all. Better than normal, I have to say.
Oh, good.
Hey, speak of the devil. How are you
what's
doing,
happening? Hey, keeping yourself busy, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I do my best. The sleep deprivation is bad, but I'm at it full time during my waking hours. So, how is everything? Have you been exploring the world of SDR lately?
Not lately, but I got into it when we were running the R&D calls, and there is a forum. I think it's Yahoo Groups. I'll just pass the information over to you. And the software was a .de website, and it's been a while since I've been there. I'll have to get on my other computer to get that link. So I was going to, so I could post it in the chat room at least. And also there is the RF Explorer on Amazon. The top one that goes to 6 gigahertz is about $360. But what's been reported to me from 2 engineers is the guy with the $5,000 Erroneous said the software for the SDR is better, and so did the guy with the RF Explorer, who's a semiconductor engineer. So apparently,
wow, that shows how much this technology is advancing. Every month. Where something 10% of the price of legacy hardware is better. That's incredible.
I know. I was surprised to hear that. And for anybody who does want to do this now, you can go over to NooElec, which is spelled NooElec.com, and they sell all the RTL dongle SDRs, like $20 like you find on Amazon. But they have bundles, and you buy that $20 RTL SDR dongle, plug it into your USB port, and then you get a little SMA connector. It's called a pigtail because it's just a short piece of wire, and you buy the $55 up converter, and that takes you up to 1745 megahertz, if I remember right. And the up converter is just a little PC board. You can spend another $20 and get the little case that goes with it, and it's just got 4 little screws to mount the cover on there, and it's all, professional and well protected, and a place to plug in, and it's got a switch on it for going through or not through for other options. But the bundles have all of that basic stuff that I just mentioned at NooElec.com.
Yeah, that's a great way to start and get your feet wet. But for our non-technical listeners, and I was in this boat myself, they need like a YouTube explaining step by step, and that's hard for us to do in the TI community. You know better than I. Some days you're so battered you just need to go outside and go on a bike ride because the electromagnetic torture is so hard. So that's why I have so much hope in the .com.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Welcome to the Tuesday Night's Triumph Over Targeting podcast. I'm your moderator, Ella. I invite Spencer Carter on to discuss the world-renowned technology, film, and music conference, South by Southwest, that takes place in Austin, Texas every spring and is attended by influencers, entrepreneurs, innovators from around the globe. The conference has launched the startup careers of countless entrepreneurs, including the founders of Twitter, and it provides a wealth of knowledge to its attendees through numerous panels and workshops. As a result, makers, hackers, inventors, producers, streamers, and corporations, big and small, attend the conference by the tens of thousands, and the influence it has on society reaches millions every year. A particular note this year is a panel submitted for consideration entitled Run Your Own Counterintelligence Service with SDR. For those unfamiliar with the term SDR, it stands for Software Defined Radio, and it has revolutionary potential when it comes to analyzing the electromagnetic spectrum. Wireless devices and their associated electromagnetic radiation are exploding in numbers, and they are everywhere. Smartphones, smart meters, appliances, and a whole host of emerging devices are familiar to us. SDR, unlike expensive hardware of the past, makes it very affordable to analyze, monitor, and understand the radiation that our generation is the first to be bombarded with on such a massive scale. Furthermore, as any biophysicist will tell you, certain electromagnetic frequencies can have negative effects on the biological systems of humans and have even been weaponized. SDR holds the potential to deter the spreading abuse of such covert weapons that are already being used to carry out Soviet-style purges in America. See bigger than Snowden.com. Therefore, this topic is of paramount importance to us. And the only way to preserve democracy is for the citizenry to remain informed. And that's from Spencer Carter's site. And I'll turn you over to Spencer now.
Yeah, hey, Ella. Let me ease into this in case these deep state thugs are playing games with my phone. They do the craziest stuff these days with my phone. They'll turn on, like, I listen to audiobooks a lot, so they'll turn on like an audio book. My phone's on the other side of the room, and like fast forward it to a chapter where like some guy's getting murdered. It's crazy the remote access software they have, and none of my antivirus software picks it up. The deep state or the military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, just harbors these zero-day exploits that they deploy on TIs, unfortunately. Anyways, I'm just going through the small talk to see if you're getting a clear reception or if I should switch to a landline or anything.
So you sound great. You sound very clear.
Excellent. That's good. I know on the last call when Tom was on,
they were hard to understand with all the interference or something that was going on, but you sound good.
Yeah, well, thanks for the introduction. I guess, first of all, who were you talking about earlier? You said his name is Brian Coffrin. I've heard a lot about him recently, a lot of buzz surrounding some of his revelations. Brian Coffrin is his real name that he goes by?
Yeah, I don't know about the pronunciation. Kofron, probably Kofron.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but is it worth listening to his what he has to say? I've gotten like tons of emails saying to check it out.
Yes, you should, because his model. Well, there's one part you won't like. He does mention human experimentation, which I know you don't like that term. He does mention that, but the rest of his model is very similar to your personal beliefs, so you definitely should give it a listen.
They were experiments at one point, many decades ago, but they transformed into crimes and treason. But
you should listen.
I don't get worked up. I don't really mind the semantics too much. As what matters is we're being tortured with these covert weapons illegally, and whether society wants to view it as an experiment or what it truly is, a crime against humanity. The important thing is society knows it's happening, because that's what will get it shut down.
He talks about DNA experiments, though. He's talking about current DNA experimentation.
All right. Well, I'll check him out. I guess he goes by Brian or Justin. But I've got his link to his site. I'll give that a listen. I'll keep what you said in mind and judge him by what he says, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for the introduction. As you mentioned, I wanted to touch on software-defined radio. So it's kind of a nerdy topic, but I guess we've got an army of nerds ruining our lives, so we've got to educate ourselves. The key to democracy and preserving it is an informed citizenry, and not just being informed in your profession or your interests or your hobbies, but being informed in all subject matters. From science to art. Let me just make my own kind of introduction to tell you why software-defined radio is important, and then I've got just a one-page brief here, and then I'll go into the aspects of software-defined radio without making it too boring, and realize you probably won't take it all in the first time, but I'll try to explain it to everyone. And most TIs I've met on these calls are smart people, so y'all will pick it up. I wasn't a professional scientist, even though I had a scientific background before I came into this. I was a businessman, it's just something that we've got to teach ourselves about. So let me read this one-page kind of brief to lay the groundwork of why this is important. Okay, here I go. The military, spy, and federal law enforcement bureaucracies have combined budgets of over $700 billion every year. The number one goal of this country for over 15 years has been to fight terror, has been selected as a contender to give a workshop panel at South by Southwest, which is a huge deal in the tech world. I mean, this South by launches so many careers. It's attended by 70,000 people, I believe, and so I want to see this guy get his workshop selected by the official South by Southwest committee as an official panel that people attending this conference are going to notice and see and learn about. So it starts putting these ideas into the minds of mainstream Americans, and also the workshops will give step-by-step examples of how we can deploy this software to detect the assaults coming against us. Let's see. There's voting going on right now, and they call it the South by Southwest panel picker, and you can find a link to his page at freedomsos.com. The top blog post on freedomsos.com will link you to his page. And I'm rebooting my computer so I can give you a direct link, but you'll see it right away at freedomsos.com. He also, his personal website is called cointel.co, which is kind of a play on the term of COINTELPRO, but he's all about, helping the good guys and, helping, TIs with people being tortured with this weaponry by detecting it. It's probably easiest to find a link to his site on my Facebook page or freedomsos.com. Just one word, freedomsos.com. But the direct URL is panelpicker.sxsw.com/vote/70975. That's panelpicker.sxsw.com/vote/70975. Once again, the guy's name is James Brown, and the name of the workshop that he wants to run is called Run Your Own Counterintelligence Service with SDR. And he's got some supporting materials on there. He's got a slideshow. He's got a link to his personal website, and it'd be great to see this guy give an official speech at South by Southwest, because not only could we learn from it, but it would just hopefully awaken a lot of people and start to get people thinking about, hey, electromagnetic weapons can do some crazy things to our biological systems. We got to stop living in the Stone Ages. We've got to stop letting our bureaucratic officials ignore these crimes against humanity, because South by Southwest is a very, very influential conference that's attended by tens of thousands, and is it's kind of a trendsetter. So it would be great to see this guy get his speech as an official selection. So it's free to vote. He's not selling anything. He's just providing information. And my hat goes off to him. So, do yourself a favor and the TI community a favor and go to that link and give him a vote, because, it'll teach us in the community more about this emerging field of software-defined radio. And eventually, as, some TIs are already doing, we'll figure out a way to deploy it to, gain further empirical evidence of the attacks being carried out against us.
Well, thank you.
That sums it up.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, let's just open it up. We'll open up the floor. I know there's going to be two topics probably. what I open with, and then what you're bringing to the table too. So I will. Let's see. Matthew, did you have a question? I noticed that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to make a fairly substantial comment on Brian Coffran, but maybe we should let people ask Spencer questions first, since we're on that topic now.
Okay, sure.
Come back to me when we switch topics, please.
Okay, it's going to be a little tricky because I'm going to have to ask everybody. We'll see. Okay. Okay. Hi, Tide. Would you like to comment, or do you have a comment or question for Spencer?
Yeah, I don't want to top the line too much, but I have a couple. Yeah. Hi, Ella. Hi, Spencer. Okay, so regarding the SDR, software-defined radio, this is a way to kind of put blocks together to create drift and transforms and that sort of thing, right? How can we use it specifically with HackRF? And what frequencies would want? And I guess this is more of a training thing, what you're talking about. But is this something we can maybe have a weekly call on and have it a technical thing and do amongst ourselves?
I envision it, just as a reception tool, just to detect and locate, any electromagnetic devices that are being used to, in a scientific studies prove are being used to torture us. And there's a TI named Clint who's working on a scientific paper on it. And there's a lot of people in the tech and .com and Silicon Valley communities working on it.
What is his name? I'm sorry.
So I'm really learning about this technology as we go. I have a